This story begins on Mount Danking, the border of the Mo cult in the heavenly realm. A girl appeared in the sunset light with her little sister and asked if she wanted to look around the place, to which the girl replied positively. They found themselves at the entrance to the mountain, where a long and beautiful staircase led up, surrounded by trees and lanterns. The girl turned out to be a follower of the Lu Dungli cult, who wanted to introduce her young companion to the local nature. Suddenly, she remembered to be sure to familiarize herself with the rules that were strictly observed and honored here. The girl happily agreed and said she would listen very carefully and follow all the norms. Suddenly, they flew sharply above the ground, quickly traveling all the steps through the air. This surprised the little sister very much. At this point, Lu Dungli began her story with the first paragraph of the rules. It was obvious from her mood that the story was going to be long. After a while, she announced that they had now moved on to the main nuance that was definitely worth knowing about. The girl said that the girl and 10 other guys had been recruited by the very same Mo cult. They landed at the top of the stairs. Also announced that she was mentoring 10 novices from now on, and the 11th would be raised by the head of the cult. What's interesting is that the very head is Lu Dungli's older brother. The difference in their ages was only 6 years. For this reason, the novices should show him more respect than even a girl. There is one thing, however. Under no circumstances was the girl to be alone with her brother, nor was she to learn from him. Many scary thoughts ran through the little girl's mind. She even thought that the teacher was eating children, which she asked her mentor about. Sighing, the one refuted such thoughts, but no calmness appeared on her face, which frightened the little one even more. Lu Dungli said that of course the master is not engaged in eating, but the truth might be even scarier. He is sick. At that moment, a memory of her brother talking complete nonsense popped into her head. He was not in the real world, but in a game. The younger sister tried her best to enlighten her brother and make him feel the power of the heavenly realm. Another memory was that the boy worshipped his parents and said that it was only after 40 that the realization came to him of how much warmth they had given him. Even though he was 12, after the boy's parents died, he kept getting confused about not only his age, but also claimed to be a template for the main character. But what's the connection? Summarizing, Lu Dungli noted that her little brother has a problem with his head. She has to protect him. She is also the only one the cult relies on. Suddenly, they saw a young man on the top of the mountain looking upward. The girl was frightened and realized that it was her older brother. He stood motionless, hovering a little above the ground. It was evident that he was thinking of something serious and lofty. He went on to say that the heavenly realm was constantly ruining his body, and soon it will go into oblivion altogether. Hearing these words, the girl was greatly frightened and even surprised, but the older one squeezed her tightly in her arms. Lu Dungli realized that she shouldn't listen to this and covered her ears tightly with her hands, but the girl kept looking at this guy on top of the mountain and couldn't take her admiring gaze off him. After recovering a bit, she exclaimed that he was incredibly handsome and hoped it was the Supreme Master. He turned his gaze on her and said that from now on, her life would be filled with happiness, for she was fortunate enough to join the ranks of his sect. Lu Dungli thought that Xiao Chu had all the necessary data to master sword skills. After all, she herself was a member of this clan. She also thought that she had made the wrong decision in taking the little girl as an apprentice. She was afraid that the girl would catch her mentor's madness and infect the others. Looking at her older brother, she informed him that the girl was tired from the road and wanted some rest, so she would take her to her chambers. As she left, Xiao Chu gazed at the new teacher with an admiring gaze. Noticing this, the senior mentor abruptly turned her head away and told her not to look back. Looking away from them, the boy began to smile slyly. It was as if he saw something in the child that he had been looking for a long time. While still in the circle of celestial light, he repeated the girl's name languorously and intriguingly thought. A virtual card opened in front of him, telling him about Xiao Chu's skills, which were quite high. The card looked like a real computer game. He figured that with her luck metrics, it wasn't them finding her. It was her finding them. He also remembered that it had been 21 years since he had entered this realm. It's important to note that Heavenly Kingdom is a modern VR game. No one knows exactly what it was created with. Some claim that it was created by aliens. Others are inclined to believe that gods worked on it. There are also those who attribute it to a parallel world. The character reminded himself that he's been playing without cheats for 21 years, and an update is expected soon. The new beta is expected to unlock some features that were previously locked down. Remembering such pleasant news, the hero smiled. He was expecting new interesting events. A pop-up notification appeared in front of Lu Chaojue's eyes and asked if he wanted to view his character's character panel. Smiling at the screen, the hero chose a positive answer. The panel reopened in front of him, where he saw his face and the 10th level indicator on the screen. In addition, it said that the character had the maximum level of charisma, but was completely lacking in other skills. Overall, the character was worthless. However, this did not upset Lu Chaoj, for he immediately thought that the performance could easily be improved. However, he realized that all these values were not so important, because what mattered to him was the level of his charm, and he was at the top of his game. Looking at the screen again, the character saw a message that the update would take place in a month, so he only had 30 days to wait. Translating this time to the time that the celestial realm lived by, the guy realized that he had to wait for 300 days. The other players could arrive by then. Stepping away from the screen, he remembered that he himself used to be part of the worthless planet Earth. He had lived on it like a puppet who wanted nothing. The hero introduced himself, informing us that he is incredibly handsome and rich. His name is Lu Chaoj, and he has always attracted many women. Memories of how he used to party in his past life flashed through his mind. He had always loved to gamble, just like the other guys. But what set him apart from the others was his wealth. He remembered that no character could surpass him in strength, for no one had such pumping capabilities. In moments between games, he would turn to his parents to make him food. However, sitting in a fancy house with the most modern equipment, he heard only silence in response. Even though my parents had a lot of money, they hardly ever showed up at home. The only thing they came for was divorce papers. In such moments, the boy realized that he was an orphan, despite the fact that his parents were alive and had not abandoned him. The only communication with them was money transfers. Even phone calls were made just for them. And when the son called, he was simply not answered on the other end of the line. The young man did not even know where they were. Given the above, one can understand why he started living his life online. Lu Chaoj remembered how he had once started a new game and set his mind to go through it. He was transported to a completely different reality. When he opened his eyes, he saw beautiful young people smiling happily at him. He felt as if he had been born again. The moment the man started talking about what he would name his son, the character realized that he was their child. The mother looked out the window at the beautiful nature around her and excitedly said she would name the baby Chaoj. Lu Chaoj. The hero never imagined that he would be able to start his life with a clean slate. Only in this world will he finally have love and attention. The screen in front of him appeared again with a message saying that the mission retrieval feature had been unlocked. For 20 years, the character has managed to gain experience but has not yet had the opportunity to start a mission. However, that time has come. The guy thought about the fact that such a chance is rarely given, so he just can't miss it and pressed the button to start the mission. A clan affiliation scan flashed on the screen, after which her identity was confirmed. It was the master of the Mo Sect. Afterwards, the player received a clan assignment. It stated that the character needed to strengthen the clan. After receiving the details, he proceeded to fulfill it. Lu Chaoj realized that his father's lifelong task was precisely to strengthen the clan. Therefore, he was proud to be able to continue his work. The monitor flashed a notification that the mission had begun. The guy was surprised by the excellent special effects the system was producing. A second later, a notification popped up, informing him that the system had been evaluated, and Mo Clan had not passed the strengthening. This was extremely surprising to the player. He realized that he wasn't really sticking to his father's idea and strengthening the clan, but he also resented the game's behavior. He remembered that when he started playing, the worst was the Zhuan clan. It was at level 9. The first class was recognized as the Sword clan. There was also rumored to be a super class, but it had long since disappeared. If the 9th grade was the worst, why did the system rank his clan the same way? Later analysis showed that all the criteria were met except that there were weak players. Lu Chaoj realized that the problem was him, and he would have to train well. He noted that if his clan was that bad, he should have been expelled from the 300 communities under the Sword clan long ago. But abruptly the hero remembered that in the Sword clan he had his own spy. It was a beautiful girl. This fact warmed his soul a lot. Suddenly the scene changed to a cemetery where our hero approached one of the graves. He knocked on one of the graves and asked if his friend was still here. Lu Chaoj forgot to mention that in addition to the 10 clan members, there was another one who was in one of the graves. One day, a clan leader picked up a warrior. He is already 100 years old. He feels fine despite the fact that he is in one of the graves. The hero thought that maybe there was a god in the grave. Probably he just chose this wonderful nature and peace rather than the noisy and fast city. On the bright side, once a warrior died, he wouldn't have to dig his grave all over again. But on the other hand, there was no way to know for sure if he was dead or alive. In the next scene, we can see the supreme meeting of the head of the Mo clan, attended by our character and his sister. Turning to his sister, The leader stated clearly and confidently that this time he was absolutely certain that it was necessary to descend the mountain, and the matter was settled. The clan elder, who was Lu Dongli, asked with great sarcasm as to why the brother was infatuated with such trivialities. This irritated the leader, and he said he would punish the companion, but just by pinching, for it was his little sister. She pulled back sharply, which made the guy even more perplexed. He thought the girl was afraid of him. However, the sister remained calm and asked about what caused the hero to want to go downstairs. It was dangerous, because it could cause problems in cultivation, to which the hero abruptly jumped up and shouted that he could no longer sit quietly on top of the mountain. He realized that it was necessary to obtain herbs that could increase his cultivation level. It was also important to obtain things that could be sold. After that, Lu Dongli jumped up, unable to believe her ears. She was thrilled that her brother had finally decided to do it. The young man didn't understand what surprised her so much about what he had done. She exclaimed that she was quite sure her brother would forever be a simpleton. Thanking the heavens, she confessed that she had not expected it. The indignant hero hastened to remind her that her level was worse than his, and asked her not to humiliate him anymore. He also told the guardian that he was not only going to raise his own level, but also raise the level of the clan among the others. At this, Lu Dongli thought that her brother's illness had become even more progressive. It was that he thought he was a hero and praised his strength. Finally, all the members of the order were ready to descend and had stocked up on the necessary food. Hai Ting, the only disciple of the master, came out with them. The leader asked his sister why she had chosen such ordinary clothes for the trek. Would anyone be able to recognize the greatness and immortality of Lu Chaog in it? She pulled her brother back sharply and told him to shut up. She reminded him that the big tree was picking up wind, so regular clothes would do better. Suddenly, 2 new characters appear on the screen. The guy tells the girl that Lu Chaoj has remained just as noisy. The girl responds by asking him what they are going to do next. And so our heroes descend through the air into the flaming forest, where the herb they need is found. Xiao Chu asked the leader what the beauty of this herb was, and why they had come down this far for it. Lu Dongli explained to the little girl that she was needed to be able to cultivate, that is, to meditate. The girl was very enthusiastic, for it was her dream to become as strong as she was. She decided that she would definitely practice meditation. At this moment, Lu Chaog squinted his eyes carefully and thought about something. In fact, in his head, he was choosing a systemic task. He was given 4 colors to choose from: orange, blue, purple, and yellow. He realized that this time, too, he had the opportunity to go on a quest to level up. But which color would he choose in the end? The orange level is chosen by the greatest number of players for being the easiest and most understandable. Blue is chosen mainly by high-level players, and the purple color is intended for professionals in this game. As for the yellow type of levels, they could only be chosen by the most desperate players who had special skills and financial capabilities. In the end, the guy didn't bother too much and chose the easiest option. Next, the narrative takes us back to the unknown couple who are following the main characters. The guy thought for a moment and wondered if they were getting too close to the surveillance targets, if they would notice them, to which his companion replied that the heroes wouldn't notice them, even if she stood right in front of the clan elder's face. The young man told his aunt that she had no need to speak in such strange descriptions. The girl asked why the guy was following the guys with her. He hesitated for a second, but said that if she really wanted to know the answer, it was probably because she hated it. She was very surprised, for the guy is a swordmaster and sovereign, a leader in his Qingzhou clan. Meanwhile, our heroes landed in the thicket of a flame forest. Lu Dongli had warned that there were many dangerous beasts in this area, so we had to be careful. The hero asked why his sister was hiding her cultivation level. He doubted that it remained as high as she had told him last time. At this accusation, the girl laughed hard and boldly declared that there was no such thing. However, the leader did not believe her, thinking that a man could always count only on himself and not on his sister. Shaking himself from that thought, the character stated that it was worth proceeding to find the necessary herb. Suddenly, a system alert appeared in front of the hero. It said that he should defeat a wild monster, a 10th level boss. The young man found the task simple, for there are hundreds of ways to overpower the enemy. Lu Dongli joyfully exclaimed that they were unusually lucky, as they had found the spirit herb very quickly. Seeing the beautiful flowers, Xiao Chu shouted to her brother that she really liked the smell. Suddenly the hero noticed someone's red eyes in the bushes. He shouted that no one should move, because there was a monster in the bushes. The clan leader was not afraid and told everyone to freeze. He wanted to eat all the grass himself so that the enemy wouldn't get it. However, the hero was sure that his luck rate was chosen by a random generator. The sister was incredibly surprised at the hero's courage, for he came right up to the beast hiding in the bushes. The younger companion, meanwhile, could not get enough of her master's boldness and admired him. Lu Dongli thought about the fact that she might have to deal with the beast alone, but if the monster was weakened, her brother could easily deal with it. Meanwhile, the couple who were watching the heroes were surprised. The guy couldn't believe the hero's courage after all. He went for a level 9 monster. And the aunt was wondering what he would do next. Nephew noticed that this beast's strength surpassed some top-level masters. Lu Chaoj wasn't too careful. Without calculating the possible consequences, he showed the beast his weaknesses. A couple observers noted that the character is completely lacking in any kind of battle tactics. Suddenly, a monster jumped out of the bushes right at the hero. It was a black-striped snake of level 10. At this moment, the master bent down to the grass they had found earlier. His ring of power shone with an unusually bright light. The rest of the team was very worried about the hero. However, he was already unstoppable. The 10th level boss had entered a dangerous battle and confidently expected to win. Lu Chaog shouted to the snake that it would not be able to defeat him in this fight, and he would blow its head off. Observers were extremely surprised by all that was going on. However, in his thoughts, he couldn't understand how the character was able to maintain an instinctive reaction after so many years. A moment arose in his memories when they were very young. The little boy was screaming that Brother Lu was bullying them and telling them that he would become a swordmaster. To this, the boy declared that he was the one who was the true swordmaster. This was followed by a strong slap from Lu Chaoge, which interrupted the fiery speech. Hero stated that his opponent is younger than he is, and therefore from this day forward he must be referred to as his brother. Coming to his senses, the grown-up boy noted that it was that blow that had driven away his youthful maximalism and knocked him out of his rut. Meanwhile, the terrible monster had been defeated. The energy returned to the ring and it began to look like it had before. The snake began to wriggle violently but could do nothing against the power of the character. Elder sister was more skeptical and noted that it was possible to defeat the monster with a single blow. The protagonist thought about the snake's ability to be poisonous until it dies. The notification that popped up in the hero's head informed him that he had successfully completed the mission and killed the monster. He was awarded 10,000 points as a reward. The guy was excited about this score and wanted to get his well-deserved reward as soon as possible. Suddenly, a message appeared in front of him. Lu Chaog thought that this was the legendary orange-grade spirit practice scroll. In the event that a cultivator is characterized by incredible achievements, he or she can obtain the blessing skill. All skills have their own specialties. Favor to lightning gives also favor to thunder. Dongli has the favor of the wind due to becoming chosen by it. In turn, Yu Yue has the fire spirit blessing, which is also considered a very powerful achievement. The master wondered what talent the gods would bestow upon him. The hero realized that in order to create his own spirit in the flame forest, he needed to hurry up. The wisdom is to take one blade of grass and find a safe place to perform the ritual. In front of his companions, Lu Chaogi set about starting this process. The nurse said she would find the safest place for him to perform the necessary procedure in silence. Meanwhile, the observers had gotten close to the sprouts. The nephew noted that he had left half of them. The other half the guy took with him, but the aunt pointed out that, for whatever purpose he took it, it must not be kept in the house, for it would be lost. However, it can be stored in a special box with other herbs so it will not lose its properties. Lu Dongli found the safest place for the ritual. There was no presence of beast or breath of living people in the area. The brother ironically remarked that he was only trying to make it to the first step, not that he would overcome the heavenly tribulation. The girl was indignant and said that safety was always the most important thing. The hero wondered for a second if he was really teaching this, but afterward put the thoughts out of his mind and began to meditate. During the ritual, the young man noticed a strange sensation inside. Sister became excited and asked if this could mean that the master would soon move on to a new, higher level. The youngest ally asked me to give her some to try as well. After all, in the event that someone ventures to eat this flower, he will definitely get painful sensations. Little Xiaochu abruptly rushed to the older girl and asked her to help Lu Chaoji immediately. Observers watched the performance of the ritual. Auntie noticed that he and Yu Yue were able to gain enlightenment after they successfully went through the ritual and broke the barriers. The woman inquired with interest about her companion's opinion on whether Kaoj would still be able to obtain his own enlightened spirit. The boy was greatly indignant and responded with a categorical refusal. After all, after the hero has reached the age of 16, it is impossible to get his spirit. In the event that Cheoj had tried to gain enlightenment earlier, he would have been able to get what he wanted. But it was too late. However, in the next second, a bright glow formed in the sky and laid its beams straight towards Kaoj. This bright glow was visible from all the villages. People gathered and gazed at it admiringly, happy for the one who had finally gotten it. It appeared that the master had obtained the spirit of a great cultivator. Suddenly, the hero burst into anger over the fact that the common people had gathered to watch him receive his enlightened spirit. The common people realized that this gift was not received by an ordinary person. Cultivators were feared by everyone. The hero found himself in a new place with a bright glow and weightlessness everywhere. While in this new place, the character was trying to figure out what enlightenment belonged to him. As he tried to get closer to the glowing objects, he realized they were all moving away from him. At one point, however, he finally got close to one of the brightly colored orbs. Watching what was happening, all the clan members were discouraged. Lu Dongli gave the little girl a yummy treat and told her to eat carefully. She looked up afterward and was greatly surprised to see her brother waking up very quickly. The little girl looked at her mentor and realized she wasn't watching her. Lu Chaojie descended from the heavens, all covered in rays of bright light. The outside observers were maximally amazed at what they saw before them, for it was a heavenly blessing. The guy who was watching Lu Chaojie was greatly angered that he had not only gained enlightenment, but was also the first to master the power of heaven and earth. He couldn't understand how he was able to achieve such a result. People from all around were whispering and wondering which clan's disciple was able to summon the illumination of the heavens to save his clan. A very loud voice was heard in Cheojie's ears. But who was it coming from? Was it really the sound of 6 people? Lu Dongli watched the scene admiringly. She realized that she could hear the voice of the 6. The observer noted that a minimum of 6 votes is required to invoke the heavenly blessing. The ant clarified with the guy about how many votes he thought Cheoj would be able to summon. He replied that it was more than they thought. At some point it dawned on our hero that the Skyway is a repeater. Lu Dongli watched from below and noticed that an 8th voice had already appeared in the blessing. Then something happened that no one present expected. At the moment of enlightenment, the 9th voice appeared. The master also heard him, and realized that it was worth taking fate into his own hands, for he himself had received all his power, and could consider himself the spirit of enlightenment. The inscription on the monitor stated that the player had obtained an enlightened spirit and gained the power of earth and sky, and was able to control water. The sisters ran up to him at once. The eldest was interested in her brother's well-being. The boy turned toward the waterfall and pulled the water balloon toward him with his mind. Playing with the water in his hand, Lu Chaoge noted that the ability to control water had many useful applications. Lu Dongli hurriedly congratulated her brother for obtaining such a useful and unusual water spirit enlightenment. Little sister couldn't stop the drooling flow. The master realized that he was able to control the water not only in the stream, but also in the body of any person. He realized that he was capable of controlling water wherever it was present. The mentor reported that she was able to clean up all the tracks. My brother asked why she had to do that, since ordinary people would not see the traces. She in turn informed that this was necessary to ensure that none of the Almighty would discover them, or else they would be finished. The Watcher realized that the one who had roughed him up in his younger days was back. At some point, her nephew stirred and realized that something was missing. After all, the master had not crossed the line. The lady was glad that it had finally gotten through to the guy that Cheoj had gotten the spirit of enlightenment, but had never crossed the starting point. At the same time, the hero, having accumulated a lot of experience, could finally raise his level because he had passed the promotion task. He realized that he had the ability to increase not only his attack power, but also pump up other skills. Meanwhile, the clan members couldn't get excited about such a pleasant event. The elder sister treated everyone to water from the spiritual spring. Finally, the sister offered to drink water from the spring to the master as well. In the process of drinking, he was not only able to cross the initial milestone, but he was able to cross 5 more. The observers were also puzzled. They did not understand how such a miracle was possible. My aunt spoke of how, even with incredible talent, it is impossible to cross 5 boundaries at once in one go. Finally, a realization came to Yu Yue. The guy had purposely kept himself at the threshold of the initial level all these years, which was the reason why he had a breakthrough now. Therefore, his thoughts in the past that the master had given up turned out to be false. He was just saving up his strength and hatching a cunning plan. He asked himself, would he have been able to do the same? Not to cross the boundary and wait so many years for the realization of his goal? The ant was not surprised that for a sip of water the hero overcame 5 boundaries. After all, he had been different from other children since childhood. Despite the fact that our young hero was unable to cross even the entry level, he did not lose hope and did not get depressed. Separated from the elders, the other 2 disciples of the clan were resting. They were pondering why the master always reacted so violently to events. At one moment, little Xiaochu felt a strange sensation inside her and couldn't understand what was happening to her. However, the senior pals immediately realized that after taking the magic herb, the girl's level had increased. She became a level 1 cultivator. This pleasant event made all the members of the clan happy. Next, a system notification appeared in front of the master that his sect had passed another check. It now fits the standards of the 9th-ranked clans. After leveling up, the hero was added skill points. Increasing the sword-wielding attribute will allow the guy to use experience points. The hero thought about the fact that mastering such a skill would provide many benefits in the future. He remembered that his nemesis Yue had the innate attribute of possessing a level 10 sword. That being said, Lu Chaoge has an amazing charisma. He even contemplated calling himself a flawless, handsome man. On the monitor, information appeared that there was a second link in the Sect's assignment. The assignment stated that the guy needed to promote the Mo clan from rank 9 to rank 8. The first of the assignment requirements was that the clan must accumulate 1,000 reputation points. The next step was to have at least 3 cultivators in the clan who had reached the second milestone. Considering that there were only 10 people in the sect so far, the task was not an easy one at all. Having a level 15 player said that they would be able to unlock the mentoring feature. The master remembered that experience points were also earned for teaching the apprentices. When Lu Chaoge selected the mentoring function, the name of a past user popped up on the screen. Seeing Lu Qingfeng's name, he remembered his father. When he died, the boy wept bitterly. He didn't understand how great people like his parents could have died so ridiculously. But pulling himself together, he promised that he would continue their cause, and under his rule, the Mo clan would become strong and great. After receiving the assignment, the mentor decided to check how his students were doing. He started with the silent Hey Teen. Seeing that the guy was only at the 10th level, Chaoge remembered that the disciple was just as stuck as him and still hadn't broken through the boundary. Upon meeting the young man, the teacher asked him why he was still on the first line. The teacher had a rough guess as to what the problem might be. A terrible memory surfaced in Hey Teen's mind. The crowd in the village crowded around the little boy and threw reproaches at him. They said that this little boy would be a nightmare for everyone in the future. They even suggested that his parents had died because of him. At one point, they got the idea to kick the boy out of town, because there is no one to stand up for him. He is an orphan. At this instant, everyone noticed the appearance of the son of the Mo clan head, Lu Chaoge. They hurriedly made way for him. Everyone admired the young boy. However, the hero turned his attention to the boy. He said he had heard of being hailed as a future bloodthirsty killer and universal evil. He offered the boy to be his faithful squire. The people in the village began to talk Chaoge out of the idea, asking him not to attract trouble. He told all the people to shut up. He announced that this boy was his disciple from that day forward. Lu Chaoge told the boy to follow him and he wouldn't care if he fell. However, the moment the boy actually started to fall, the mentor grabbed his hand firmly. Afterward, he told the boy to hold on to him tightly. Calling him ugly, he smiled sweetly. Back in modern-day realities, where mentor and apprentice were standing on a mountaintop, they were having a conversation about these events. The teacher said that the best way to raise a devil is to first provide a person with a bad life, then give him a ray of hope, and at the end to take it away from him. Seeing Hai Ting's distressed look, the hero hurried to reassure him, for his ray of hope was the future patron of the entire world. Afterward, he asked if his follower thought that that situation from his childhood was like a fog enveloping his heart and thoughts. Next, something unimaginable happened. The disciple abruptly felt a strange sensation inside himself, which surprised him very much. Overwhelmed by the blessing, the Mo Hai Ting clan disciple looked up into the sky and was able to overcome the initial boundary in a second. A notification popped up in front of the mentor once again, stating that due to the clan member's level increase, he would receive 5,000 experience points. Lu Chaoge hurriedly rejoiced and immediately appropriated this achievement for himself. After all, he is the one who is an excellent mentor. Little Xiao Chu also thought so, as she looked at the clan head with admiration and thought he was amazing. At this time, Yu Yue watched with horror but also interest. He thought the master was very strong and was learning that the powers of heaven and earth had such uses as well. At first, the observer thought that the enlightened spirit would be of no use, for he was at the beginning stage, but it became obvious that it was he who helped the disciple to overcome his inner demon. Auntie thought of what was happening as an evil fate for both boys. A delighted Lu Dongli rushed over to congratulate her brothers for breaking the initial milestone and promised that they could achieve unprecedented heights and honors in the future. The hero thought it would be cool to get a limited edition version of the skyboat from Auntie Nin. Little Xiao Chu clarified if she could eat it, for she had always thought about food. The mentor asked Lu Dongli to find a secluded place where he could demonstrate his abilities. The girls abruptly soared into the air and flew to do the master's bidding. After they landed, the excited mentor ran to catch fish, for everyone was excited to see what Chaoge would cook. Hai Ting began to set the table at once, and the little girl ran beside him. The mentor told the girl to approach him, for he wanted to tell her all about the path of cultivation. Finally, when Big Sister returned, she showed everyone her catch. At this moment, she saw Cheoj and Xiaochu sitting together. He began teaching the little girl his tricks. The master was pleased with this answer and praised the apprentice, calling her capable. Dongli was startled when she saw this dialogue and feared that the little girl had already been infected by her mentor. Soon the interlocutors felt a strange sensation. The teacher asked the girl if she could feel how cold it was. Turning back, the mentor saw the older sister. She demanded that her student not be touched. Pulling the wizard away from the child, she began to explain to her that you can't act like the head of the clan. The girl said that she shouldn't worry about such a thing since the Mo clan had a follower like her. Cheoj nodded approvingly. In that second, Dunli realized that the little one had finally caught on and now had the same hang-ups as her older brother. Finished with a snack, the whole team headed home. The girls were happy and satiated after the walk. The guy thought to himself that that was the year he learned to cook the most delicious Chinese and European dishes. In front of them, they saw the couple that had been following them constantly during their adventure. The protagonist turned to Aunt Nin and asked if they had to wait long for the guys. The woman said that they themselves had only recently arrived, so they had not waited long at all. Cheoj asked his relative if she wanted to reward him with a floating boat or something else for finally breaking the boundary. She agreed. The guy rejoiced and rubbed Yue's head, saying that he was the chief rascal of this realm. He chuckled sweetly, smiled, and acted completely strange. The master couldn't believe that his fellow student didn't return the favor. Finally, there was a suggestion to go inside the house. Auntie happily agreed and mentioned that if anyone had a problem with cultivation, she would be happy to help. After the woman answered all of the young girl's questions, she checked with Cheoj to make sure he had no questions for her. He asked if a master didn't have a high level of swordsmanship. Should he delve deeper into that or overcome the tripe? Auntie and Yue were extremely surprised by such a question and interrogated if he definitely wanted to know about how to achieve sword precognition. The guy confirmed and thought about the 100,000 experience needed to do so, and could be spent on raising a full 3 levels. After thinking for a bit, the mentor replied that in case a master wanted to become a sword cultivator, he should spend all his strength on refining. At all times, any cultivator who had reached the highest level of sword mastery could gain precognition much faster than ordinary people. With preconsciousness, the master is able to gain many more points for each boundary break. After answering to herself, Auntie thought to herself that Cheoj's current level was still far from him gaining preconsciousness. But the guy jumped up sharply and said that he would not let her expectations down, for he would try to get what he wanted as soon as possible, spending all his energy on it. She was surprised and said that wasn't what she meant. She didn't hold out any hope that Cheoj would work so hard for it. Yue finally couldn't stand it and jumped up from his chair with fury and said that it was impossible. The master clarified with him why he thought it was impossible. The opponent said that in order to gain precognition, he had wandered on the brink of life and death for many years, and even after that, he was only halfway to what he wanted. In the event that he can finally accomplish this mission this year, he will surpass the master who currently holds the position by a full year. Also said not to take the issue so lightly. After finishing his story, the boy gave a meaningful hum. This angered Cheoj. Dongli looked at her brother and thought about how he had too much ambition. At this time, Auntie laughed very hard as she watched the arguments that were taking place between the boys. She said that Yue was already halfway into pre-consciousness and almost got what he wanted. She suggested a battle of rivals. Both guys were determined, so they didn't hesitate for a second before agreeing to such an idea. Next, the woman asked Yue to lower her level to Cheoj's level, because that way the competition could be considered fair. It was time for an important battle. When Yue took out his weapon, it began to emit an incredibly beautiful bright light. This really surprised Dongli. She had no idea that he had been able to develop it so much during this time. Auntie noted that the 3 kids, including her, had gotten swords with the same level of development. Little Xiao Chu, who was watching, asked her senior mentor with interest how strong her master's opponent was. The girl replied that he was recognized as one of the strongest professionals among the younger generation. The little girl thought briefly and said that since he was so strong only among the youth, then her master would definitely win. Meanwhile, Yue asked his opponent why it was taking him so long to reach for his weapon. He replied that he could not do that. He's afraid that after that there might be casualties. Someone might die. This angered his opponent. He asked if Cheoj thought he wasn't worthy of having a fellow student draw his sword. Our hero thought for a moment and replied that he hadn't sealed the weapon for a whole 9 years to waste energy on it now. After that, the call for the battle to begin sounded, and the opponents rushed at each other with fury. Yue shouted with anger that in case Cheoj didn't want to take out his sword, he would make him do it. Auntie said that it was very difficult to conduct a battle relying solely on the cunning of techniques. Yue tried to attack his opponent as much as possible in order for him to finally draw his sword and start fighting as an equal, to which Cheoj was outraged and said that the guy hadn't even used precognition against him yet and was already asking him to pull out his weapon. At that time, Yue's aggression level peaked and he dared to use the ability in battle. The moment the opponent began to perform this magic, Dungli's sword began to charge as well. But Cheoj reported that Yue wasn't too successful at using magic, as his sword didn't even twitch. Enraged by these words, the opponent gathered all of his magic power and unleashed his most powerful technique. The moment his opponent attacked, Cheoj finally realized the difference between not having and possessing pre-consciousness. Then he gathered all his will and told him to unlock his ability, to which the system easily performed this action and reported that the unlock was successful, and the hero gets an additional 100,000 experience. However, the opponent was not yet aware of this master's ability. Looking at Yue's use of the lone sword technique, Auntie thought that he was finally worthy of becoming a swordmaster's successor, but she realized that as long as she was around, no one could harm Lu Chaoge. As she thought about protecting the boy, she saw something that struck her. After getting almost close to his opponent, Yue encountered an obstacle. The barrier shielded the master from the sword magic. Finally, when his sister also had her sword trembling violently, she asked in surprise, wondering if his brother had been able to comprehend the sword's pre-consciousness. What Xiaochu saw today would subsequently affect her greatly in the future. In the next moment, Cheoj easily intercepted the sword that was pointed at him and felt the full power of the new skill. Smiling wryly, he asked his opponent if simply not being stupid wasn't enough to get such a tool. The man was dumbfounded and did not know what to say. He only said that it could not be so. He said, "It's not possible because our hero has become fully conscious." Yue began to vigorously attack his opponent, for he couldn't believe that the full ability had been revealed to him. Eventually, the battle was lost and the enemy was left standing surprised and depressed. After the guy lost, disappointment settled in his soul. He began to remember what a long way he had traveled to get a new skill. The daily exhausting workouts he had spent perfecting himself had failed, nor did the advice given by the famous masters help him. Even battles with terrible monsters did not honor him. He couldn't accept that he had put so much effort for the sake of possessing sword pre-consciousness, but all in vain. He couldn't understand why it came so easily to Cheoj after all. He hadn't put any effort into it. In the end, he still restrained his pride and asked the senior master what the secret to his success was. Using the wind technique, the mentor stood calmly. After honoring his fellow student with his attention, he allowed him to ask questions. Yue said that he had studied the ancient scriptures carefully. But without the experience of passing the third boundary, there was no point in thinking about gaining pre-consciousness. Furthermore, the guy had consulted with the current swordmaster. He had told him that with an ability like his, he could already get what he wanted at the third level. But how did Cheog do it? The hero calmly replied to him that with the ancestral writings and help from the swordmaster, Yue should already be happy since he was standing on the shoulders of giants. But with such opportunities, why didn't he try to look deeper and try to search for the answer himself? He also said that history is necessary so that we can break it down and make our own discoveries. These words echoed in the student's mind, and he pondered their meaning. In the end, he realized that the hero was stronger than he was. After Yue agreed with Chaog's opinion, the girl cringed at the fact that he too had fallen under the spell of his older brother. The final question to the master was when did he start practicing the skill of wielding his sword? He calmly replied that he had started practicing exactly from the moment he received this weapon. Cheoj thought to himself that he wasn't fooling his friends. After all, he had really spent all the experience points he had saved up over the years to master the skill. Yue bowed to the master and said that he realized everything. Auntie couldn't be happy about the painting. After thinking for a bit, the fellow student said he had one more question for his older counterpart. He asked the master to provide him with his sword to examine it from all sides. The hero replied that he could not allow that, for he had kept it not for him for 9 years. The time to bear the scabbard had not yet come. The opponent was beginning to guess why the master was reluctant to draw his sword. Many years ago, a mysterious monster caused a real disaster in Qingzhou. Cheoj's parents got in its way. They fought desperately against the undead, trying to unite their forces. But in the course of the unequal battle, they lost their lives. It was then that Yue realized that all the weapon power that had been saved up for 10 years was for killing the unclean force that had ruined his parents. After the battle was over, it was nearing evening. Auntie and Yue said that they wanted to stay in the palace for a while. The hero rejoiced at this news, because the relative promised to help him improve his flying technique. Sitting in her room, Auntie sneezed, thinking someone was thinking of her. At this moment, she was just adding another protective seal for Keoj, for he was too defenseless at the moment. The hero, on the other hand, couldn't believe that the vile Yue had completely had an epiphany after the battle, and recognized the fact that he had been wrong all along. He also said that once he could comprehend the completeness of his mentor's words, he would be able to fully know the sword pre-consciousness. The player realized that there was no point in envying Yue. After all, he was a cheater. Once in the cemetery, he approached the familiar grave where his maid rested. When the servant girl showed herself out of the grave, the guy asked her a question about the difference between the clan head today. Despite not being of high intelligence, it was noted that she was incredibly strong, but the ghost gave no sign that anything had changed. He asked again, could she not see that the master had made a breakthrough? Keoj was upset, and even wanted to take away her seed, but he remembered that she had saved his clan from disaster a couple hundred years ago. Even though the maid was just a bot, she had a connection to the clan and protected it. The head of the clan should pay her handsomely for it. At the time when the boy's father was alive, he paid the servant with spiritual pearls. However, his son went further and gave the most precious thing a man has, his seed. In the tradition, it was said that 1 drop of such seed was equal to 10 drops of blood. After the servant girl received her reward, she soared high and began to make strange noises. The boy, however, leaned on the grave without strength and said that the maid had squeezed all the strength out of him. A pop-up notification said that the takeover system had received a purple level. Our hero realized that a servant girl could not only keep the clan safe, but also add purple level skills. Each clan has the ability to use different techniques to gain skills. Blue techniques are not bad, but purple techniques have the best qualities. Cheoj's technique was that he was able to liquefy the surrounding energy and absorb it like drinking water. In Qingzhou, this absorption technique was considered one of the rarest. Suddenly he noticed that the tract had a medium level rather than a low level. He wondered if perhaps she had made a mistake in giving him this scroll. The absorption technique probably has different ranks. If that's true, the further it goes, the scarier it gets. In that case, our hero was willing to sacrifice a few more drops of his seed to get the result. He offered the maid a favorable exchange. The boy could give her a few more drops of his seed, and she would give him a few more volumes in return. However, she did not answer him or give him any signs of life. It was understandable, for her memory was short and she did not understand what he was saying. The master wondered why he could understand the ghost's thoughts. Perhaps because of the contract, but more likely, it was simply because he was already used to it. As he said goodbye to the maid, he noticed how happy she was. It wasn't surprising, since she was always like this when she received his seed. Meanwhile, Dungli was crying in the palace. Little Xiaochu came up to her and told her not to get upset because the clan had her. The girl replied that this was what embarrassed her. After all, if all the students followed the master's example, they would be beaten badly. In response, the girl interjected, did the mentor think she was the one and only? Xiaochu had most likely inherited about 30% of her brother's essence. She told her after coming down from the mountain to tell everyone that she was a novice of Lu Chaoj, and Dungli had nothing to do with her. The girl looked at the teacher in surprise, but the teacher, without pity, pushed the little one out of the door and told her that she had no other choice. The mentor realized that after the common people beat the student for bragging, they would definitely come after the teacher as well. As she watched the little girl run merrily off into the distance, the girl thought of giving her apprentice to her older brother. Remembering how cute and small the girl was, Dungli started looking for a better idea than just giving her to her brother. At some point, she realized that in the event that the student couldn't be beaten, it meant they wouldn't get to her either. From that point on, she vowed that she would never take on any more students, nor would she do any more mentoring. In addition, she would train Xiaochu. She would do so until she reached at least average skill levels. After the girl came up with this ingenious plan, she swore on her brother's life that she would accomplish everything as she planned. Remembering her student Luo Bing, she decided to definitely never teach again, for it was a very sad experience. At some point, that girl became a favorite follower. However, it turned out that she only wanted to be a wife for Dungli's older brother. Meditating on the mountain, Cheoj sneezed dramatically and wondered who could possibly be remembering him at this late hour. But he immediately dismissed these thoughts, because the most important thing for him now was to go through a few more refinements with meditations to gain experience points. The moment the improvement occurred, Cheoj looked like a celestial soaring through the sky, surrounded by bright light. In the ritual of levitation, he absorbed the energies of heaven and earth, eroding his flesh. In this way, he accumulated experience. The erosion of the flesh was a painful process, as if air was being injected into the blood vessels. Therefore, this technique was also called the suffering technique. At one point, he felt too bad and realized that he should interrupt the meditation and continue it another time, otherwise he could die. He pondered recent events and couldn't understand why the techniques for scoring points couldn't be more enjoyable. If the ghost had given him a paired cultivation technique, surely this process would have been much more comfortable. For example, one could spend time in the company of pleasant ladies, filling up on experiences. But he realized at the same second that he would be dried up in that case. While resting, the boy noticed a hovering carriage approaching, carrying Aunt Ning. He wondered why she had come at such a late hour. The relative informed him that they were about to leave their castle, returning to the Sword Clan. But before doing so, she would like to give him his artifact, which was already ready. It was evident that the boy was greatly distressed at this news and wondered why the aunt was in such a hurry to get away from them to go home. She replied that she has a lot of things to do in her clan as well. She doesn't have so much free time to chill out for long. After that, she held out her hand and presented the artifact she had made herself. The guy was taken aback, for he saw that he had a leaf boat in front of him. It was a blue-level artifact of low quality. The hidden effect was a single use of the water veil seal. Usually, the sheet boat is a high-quality item, but it belongs to the yellow level. Auntie, on the other hand, added a hidden effect, due to which the quality improved. In that second, he realized that his aunt really loved him since she had given him such a wonderful gift. The relative inquired if everything was all right. She realized that at the guy's level, he wouldn't be able to see the hidden effect. He replied that everything was fine, but he thought the artifact was not quite ordinary. Auntie was surprised that with that level of skill, the guy was able to discern the strangeness of what she had given him. He reported that for the sake of living a long life, he would learn to cultivate very carefully. Hearing this, the woman remembered a conversation she had had with her sister many years ago. She had talked about how she wanted to live a very long time. The boy also remembered that his mother had told him that she wanted to live 500 years. She had left this world so early, her dream had not had time to come true. But every year, the clan honors her memory, so Chaj plans to live at least until her mother is 500 years old. The aunt was very mortified when she heard this. Then she decided to give the boy a special scroll that contained the techniques for creating artifacts. The master was very surprised, for he had received such an award for absolutely nothing. Finally, the woman boarded her airship and announced that it was time for her to return. The guy smiled and invited her to visit again when Auntie had some free time. Yu also wanted to say goodbye, but the fellow student didn't pay much attention to him. Suddenly, a bright light appeared in the sky and something began to fly from above directly at the young man. In a second, a sword stuck in the ground was next to him. Seeing this, Cheoj became serious and said that Gengjin men had become quite bold. The Sword Sect is one of the most powerful sects in the world. It is recognized as the strongest in Qingzhou. It has 300 clans that report to it. Further, the clans are also divided into the top, middle, and bottom 100. Around the very bottom is the Mo clan we know. This is the lowest rank possible. The hero didn't understand what the point of this division was. Aren't weak sects all equally weak? However, the Gengjinmen clan, who are in open conflict with ours, are an order of magnitude higher in the lowest level. Oh yes, they are average among the weakest, what an accomplishment. And while boasting of such a place in society, they dare to look with disdain at the Mo clan, which is getting stronger by the day. Gengjinmen, Mo, Chushuimen are clans that are located within a radius of 50 kilometers. However, the entire area used to belong to the Mo community. Everyone used to coexist amicably. But when they realized that Keoj's father was dead, they decided to take over. They are not worthy of paying attention to. The guy pulled the sword out of the ground with his mind and sent it back to where it came from. In that province, Head Lin Lun informed Head He that their clan would soon become the first within a 50-kilometer radius. He too replied that he didn't doubt it. After all, there was only Keoj in the Mo clan who was only recently able to overcome the starting point. With these resources, they will no longer be able to compete with them to obtain important resources. Intercepting the flying sword, He Tu said, replying very quickly. Apparently the kid is shaking with fear. Lin Lun assumed that he was willing to fall at their feet. After all, they were much stronger. When they opened the message, however, they were greatly surprised, for there was no reply. The girl couldn't believe her eyes. She was indignant that Cheoj wasn't just answering to some subordinate. In a rage, Hetu shouted that the clan head was too arrogant and impolite. However, the woman noted that despite his mediocrity, he acts like a real man, and said that since he was acting like that, he should be taught a lesson at a meeting of the 3 sects. He agreed with her and decided to make a plan to show him what true power was. Meanwhile, in Mo province, the clan heads were thinking about the upcoming event. Dungli asked if she should go with her brother. That one responded by saying no. Because the sister was hiding her cultivation level, they might think that they were weak. She got embarrassed and said she was willing to reduce her secrecy for such a thing. Then she could go with him. But the hero still refused and told him to stay home. Suddenly a strange wind blew, which Cheoj thought was the wind of passion. Dongli noticed that Luo Bing had broken through. This surprised her greatly. The girl marveled at how quickly her student had done well and emerged from her hermitage. The brother interjected, why did he dislike his first student so much? Then he pointed at Hai Ting and said that he had no more luck with his disciple. However, Lu Dongli jumped up from her seat and accused him of having a girl's eye on him. She then grabbed his face, to which her brother asked her not to spoil his beautiful looks. Mentor thought about why her follower wanted to become her brother's wife at her expense. The story tells that when Lobin was only 6 years old, her parents sold her into a brothel. The mistress of that place raised the girl for 5 years. In addition to basic lessons, she also taught her how to serve men. At the age of 11, she was put up for auction. The buyer had the right to spend the first night of her life with her. The starting price to buy a night with Bing was only 10 liang, after which the men began to name larger and larger sums in an attempt to outbid the competitor. Competitors watched the action from the balcony, whispering that no such high ransom had been offered for them. They talked about how men only look at appearances when they come to an establishment like this. One competitor claimed to have many other talents as well. For example, can sing and play the flute. Oh, and how could they even compare her sharp angles under her dress to her lush fruit? The bidding became more and more fervent. The sums reached up to 42 liang. At the same time, the more ransom was offered, the more sad the girl became. As a young girl, she dreamed of the appearance of a lord who would rescue her and take her away from this place. The next moment, someone's voice was heard in the hall shouting the sum of 10,000 liang. To the surprised faces of the men, Cheoj entered the hall and repeated that he was ready to pay. He wanted this girl. The outraged crowd discussed this crazy act among themselves. The landlady of the place said in unprecedented enthusiasm that he had bought the night for 10,000. Luo Bing was able to see through the outfit that the lord was incredibly handsome and not like the others. Cheoj said he's not just buying the first night, he's buying the girl out altogether. After a little thought, the landlady agreed. After all, she had nothing to lose. Girls don't live long in this field. Next, she pushed the girl right under her new master's feet. Kneeling in front of Cheoj, the girl looked up at him with loving eyes. He smiled sweetly at her, then threw a stack of money into the crowd. The girl thought that night he was like a god who had come down from heaven. The owner of the establishment hurriedly gave the guy all the documents on the girl and did not cease to be amazed at her luck. Other kept women were openly jealous and said that they themselves were willing to pay to get to him. The hostess demanded of Luo Bin that she call him her master. She looked at Cheoj and realized that he now owned her completely. But the hero simply tore up the documents and told her that she was completely free from that day forward. This shocked everyone, for he tore up a bonded record worth 10,000 liang. Luo Bing realized that from this day forward, she would follow him even without a bondage record. The master held out his hand to her and beckoned her to follow him. The girl agreed eagerly, but at that moment, Dongli popped out and beckoned her little sister to follow her. The former maid was walking down the alley and contemplating the oddball locations. It was the first time she had stepped out of a brothel. The senior mentor promised that there were many more miracles ahead, but the girl could not take her eyes off the hero who had saved her. He was the main miracle for her. Her sister's jealousy was going over the edge. She wanted attention for herself. Cheoj suggested that his companion take a walk and look at the beauty of the local lanterns. Luo Bin willingly agreed, which made Dongli even angrier. The hero asked his sister if she was comfortable walking, taking offense. She replied that it was none of his business. The guy looked at his companion and thought he had hit the jackpot on this deal. He was pleased with its characteristics. There was also the possibility of discovering a hidden plot. Such a possibility was rare. Despite spending from the Mo clan's stockpile, the purchase would clearly pay off. The head mentor required Cheog to be serious, for their students would be arriving soon. The moment the mentors were arguing amongst themselves, they felt the wind of passion grow stronger. Luo Bing was following the call of an unknown voice that told her to come to the bamboo house. She mistook it for the Lord's voice, for it had been so long since she had seen him. The girl flew to that call, for the hero was the only one waiting for her. Meanwhile, Dongli clarified whether her brother had definitely made the final decision. He replied that it was time to start listening to his older brother. She was indignant, for he had decided to take a young girl, not her, to the meeting of the 3 sects. And then it occurred to the guy that his sister was jealous of him. That's what he asked. The girl was embarrassed, but immediately made a nonchalant face. She said she wasn't jealous at all, drinking her cup of tea in a gulp. She further demanded an explanation as to why the brother had made such a decision. Guy asked if the sister knew the true meaning of the 3 clans meeting. The girl asked resentfully, "Which one?" He said it's important to demonstrate your strength at the meeting. Hating is not strong enough and she is hiding her talents. That's why we should take Lobin. This information surprised Dungli greatly. She clarified whether it was definitely because of that. The master replied that the more beautiful the girl next to him, the stronger the clan. Take Tao Bao and Jing Dong, for example. The sister was surprised, not realizing who her brother was talking about. At this moment, Luo Bing entered the room and greeted her supreme mentors. The girl began to sigh, using the languorous breathing technique she had learned in the brothel. She was indeed an artist. Seeing Hei Ting, she also said hello to him as well, greatly embarrassing him. Cheoj looked at the girl and remembered all the pictures he had seen before on the internet. The girl's temperament was similar to the way the young ladies in the pictures behaved. Luo Bin noted that the host had strong stamina, as she used all the familiar seduction techniques. She dreamed of being alone with him, hidden away from her older sister. The master informed the apprentice that she would have to go with him to a meeting of the 3 clans in 3 days. That's when she realized this was a unique opportunity to be alone with her master. She readily agreed and rejoiced at the news. But Dungli didn't understand why she was smiling so much and eyed the girl suspiciously. She pounded the table afterward and thought to herself, why do daughters-in-law even exist in this world? Then the thought crept into Master's mind that he had greatly offended his sister. This was confirmed by Hai Tin as well. The mentor asked the student why he dared to make a remark. He excused himself by saying that he didn't mean it. To smooth things over, the disciple wanted to pour Keoj some tea, but Luo Bin abruptly snatched the teapot from him and told him not to bother. Using her tea-pouring charms, the girl sought to impress the master. These techniques she also learned while she was in foster care in a brothel. But the master paid no attention to this, for he was thinking that Dungli was not merely offended, she was jealous. The girl was very upset and couldn't understand why she was completely ignored. The clan head noted her skills but remembered that in a past life, he's seen a lot of women's tricks in his past life. That's why he can't be taken in by such methods. Luo Bing couldn't take her eyes off her mentor. She was beckoned by his cold gaze, graceful personality, and sublime appearance. At that moment, she realized that she must, by all means, win the heart of the clan head. She dares to take real action to get his love. The head, of course, noticed this and couldn't understand how things could have turned out this way. In his previous life, he had won over girls, not the other way around. With 3 days left before the clan meeting, the apprentice would take all the work away from Hei Ting to be alone with her master. She showed her charms even when she was just wiping the table, but the master only remarked that if she rubbed the table so long, she might rub a hole in it. After that, she took away water from Hei Ting to pour into the master's bath. Purposely pouring water over herself and getting wet, she tried to at least get attention that way. This art was also her trump card, for the clothes became transparent from the water. But the master told the servant to take the girl out since she can't even carry water properly. The maid was in utter despair and didn't know what to do. She finally took away the servant's bedding as he was changing his master's bed. Allegedly by accident, she slipped and fell on top of her, exposing her beautiful shapely legs. But the mentor only scolded her for lying in her clothes and told Hei Ting to change her underwear again. 3 days later, the clan head was once again conducting meditations that elevated his level. Watching this, the girl noted that even while cultivating, her master looked beautiful. Finally, he finished conducting his ritual and told her to follow him. It was time for them to go to the meeting. The girl gladly agreed and followed her master. Determined, Cheoj said that he was now ready to go to the meeting of the 3 clans. On the road, the only thing on his mind was that Dungli didn't even come to say goodbye to them. I'd have to teach her a lesson. The maid hovered in her thoughts and was glad that this was her first journey with her master. She looked at his statuesque demeanor and made plans together for the future. In a moment, she even thought they would sleep in the same bed. He turned around abruptly and interrogated her. She blushed and realized she had said it out loud. He questioned her once more about what she had just said. Embarrassed, the maid started talking about how peerless he was and would surely outshine everyone at this gathering. She was sure that such words would definitely help to bring the situation down. The brothel owner said that there was nothing better than praise for men, but he pulled her back sharply, telling her to stop sucking up to him. The dumbfounded girl stopped talking. She thought the boy meant something else entirely. The landlady had told her that men liked that kind of thing. The girl stood in front of her master and opened her mouth. When he realized what she was about to do, he sharply pushed her away and told her to calm down. The master reflected on the fact that the upbringing given in childhood does have a lifelong impact. Suddenly, the maid held out a glass to him and asked if the young gentleman would like a sip of the sacred water. He replied that she should not cater to him in that sense. However, he realized that he was indeed the one who had bought her out earlier, so for sure the girl probably still feels inferior to the rest of us. The hero asked her to pour another mug. She gladly agreed to oblige the young master. He wondered if that was how she liked to address him so much. The servant replied in agreement and clarified if he liked it. To herself, she thought to herself that her master wanted a more intimate nickname. An idea popped into her head as to what she would call him this time. Perhaps he'd like it if she called him Daddy. The master even choked on the water and told her to shut up. The upbringing she had received earlier was clearly having a bad effect on her. In his head, however, he thought about the fact that men really like being daddies. Finally, they approached Sentinel Peak, the place that had been chosen for the meeting of the three clans. When they got closer to the meeting place, they noticed that no one else was at the meeting yet. The player was indignant that he arrived at the appointed time and no one was waiting for him. Are they trying to show their power in this way? Suddenly, the girl noticed someone appeared on the horizon. They saw an object with 2 passengers flying in the distance. The master pointed out that it wasn't the clan heads who flew to them, but just the master's apprentices. It was done on purpose to provoke. Luo Bin realized that the competitors wanted to scare her master. He was about to show off his protagonist aura, but realized it wasn't necessary. The newly arrived character was going to intimidate his rival, as he had been commanded by his clan mentor. With undisguised arrogance, he asked if Cheoj was the head of the Mo clan, but the one just turned around without replying and activated the spiritual wind technique. This shocked the representatives of the other clan. They realized they hadn't even had time to scare him and couldn't figure out what was going on. Thinking he was just drawing, they decided to move on to another plan of action. After introducing themselves as disciples of Zhongchu and Shen Jing, they bowed in respect. They thought that after being treated politely, the clan head wouldn't be able to scold them and would only say hello politely. But no reaction followed. They did not understand why he did not respond to them with courtesy. Was he pretending to be deaf and dumb? As they hurried to unbend, they realized they could not do so. Their bodies had become too heavy. Cheoj, however, did not let them cheat, for he is the master of stratagems. Agonizing in pain, the disciples of the rival clan could only sigh. Next, the hero thought that was enough, and with one sweep of his fingers he flung the servants to the grass. Luo Bing thought that this was still a fairly light punishment. After all, the Lord possesses the water power of the heavens and earth. The servants jumped up and declared that they were not at all frightened, for it was a sneaky trick. The competitor suggested Cheoj come with him to the gazebo and talk. He began to talk about how the head of Chushui-men was already deciding the issue of power sharing within a 50-kilometer radius. The second maid knew that our hero's cultivation level was low, so she hurriedly walked behind them. Continuing to talk about the division, the guy started saying that the Mo clan can only... But he didn't have time to say anything, because then Cheoj magically pulled his opponent's sword from its sheath and cut off his leg. The second companion looked in horror at the fellow student who was writhing in pain and screaming. She couldn't believe the hero had accomplished such a thing with just one finger. Cheoj said the guy was yelling too loud and made him shut up. Luo Bing admired her master's actions and marveled at the power of his magic. The wounded servant could only moo, begging for a companion to stop his bleeding. She was very afraid, because if she tried to do that, Cheoj could easily chop off her head as well. But the master sat down quietly in the gazebo and asked the maid to pour him some tea. Then the girl from the other clan thought that he was allowing her to heal her companion's wound. Touching him with 2 fingers, she easily relieved his pain, and he breathed a sigh of relief. She couldn't understand why the lowly Mo clan head had such a terrifying aura. The master asked her what was wrong and if she was thirsty. The girl was shocked by this suggestion. She grabbed her companion and tried to get out of sight as quickly as possible. Luo Bin noted that the woman quickly understood the hint the master had given her. He noted that only a fool would not have realized it. The maid smiled and said that the apprentice was too chatty today. Then the teacher told her to sit down and observe the beautiful view with him. The clan heads should be arriving soon. The girl bowed humbly and took a seat beside him. She then began to praise how the gentleman had taken down the insolent men with 1 finger. In this way she applied the technique of sucking up, and in her head she marveled at how wonderful her master was. Cheoj, of course, noticed the way the girl radiated her charm and smelled the melon scent that emanated from her, but he couldn't afford to show her any leniency, or she'd get naked. If she remembers the scene years from now, it's worth replacing the pool of blood with the blooming scarlet flowers nearby. Meanwhile, the servants who had already encountered Cheoj were trying to get away from such a monster as soon as possible. The girl flew with all her might to report to her mentor as soon as possible. A fellow student who had caught the face of all the branches on the way reminded her that the girl could fly with her sword, to which she abruptly cut him off and told him not to talk to her. Finally, they arrived at their clan's territory. The other disciples asked them where the wounds came from. Seeing the battered face, they also thought it was the work of a cultivator. The clan masters at this time dreamed that all 50 nearby kilometers would soon belong to them, but frightened disciples came running into the room with the story that Cheoj had wounded one servant and scratched the face of another. The clan head became very angry. He began to shout that the rival had completely lost his mind. How dare he do such a thing? His companion noticed that he had lost his temper. The mentor told the disciple to eat the potion in order to be cured. He then demanded that the student give a detailed account of everything. On emotion, the guy started recounting all the events very quickly. The teacher was surprised and asked again, did he really tear off the servant's leg with one finger? The one confirmed and said that he felt the power of heaven and earth from Chaoj. The mentors pulled their faces in surprise. They didn't understand how an entry-level scum could achieve such a result. The second maid also said that she had some information. The mentor told her not to delay. She told me that a new talent had recently been born nearby. This talent had received the 9 decrees of the heavenly Tao. The mentor was very surprised and decided that he urgently needed to go on a reconnaissance trip to the place where this happened. Along the way, he thought that he should definitely lure such talent into their clan. Suddenly, the powers of the heavens opened. The spirit was outraged that someone dared to peek at his actions. The sect head realized that he should rather get away from the great cultivator's strength. Thinking about it in his head, the master feared that such a hero was exactly Lu Chaoj. What if he didn't just become the one with the power? What if someone is behind him? In that case, it was understandable why he dared not answer the letter and ripped off the clan disciple's leg. Seeing the mentor's nervous tension, the students whispered about what had happened to him, and his companion couldn't realize that the guy had actually accepted the 9 decrees of the heavenly Tao. Her emotions went from disdain to admiration. She realized that her clan wasn't even worthy of shining the shoes of such a hero. Looking at the second head, she realized that this old man was standing in her way. She decided to seduce Chaoj in order to start a warm relationship with him. The head told them to gather all the elders to calculate how many resources they should return to the Mo clan. The students questioned in surprise, did they really mean it and the mentor wants the resources back? The one told them to shut up and just do as they were told. The mentor, however, looking at her companion, was not surprised, but merely stated that all men were the same. At this time, our hero received a new notice. While Luobin was admiring her master's beauty, he was immersed in his own thoughts. The notification stated that his clan's reputation had increased to 500 points. He realized that his message had been received by the mentors of other sects. However, small clans gave very few points. The ranking had only increased by a drop. It wasn't worth what he had done to the servants. In the mind of the hero settled the realization that it is necessary to come up with more effective methods to raise the rating of the clan. Looking at Luo Bing, he was surprised by her gaze. He asked her if it was the flowers growing on his face that caught her attention. The girl was abruptly embarrassed and said she was just thinking about her own. The guy didn't understand why she was so flustered and if she shouldn't be a little more frank. Our hero couldn't understand why the lower-level people were so cautious and shy. The girl cherished her love like a thief cherishes the gold he has stolen. Events take us back to Mo Province, where a pensive Dungli sat on the peak of a mountain. She wondered what her brother was doing now with the sinful student. Images of all sorts of silly things popped into her head. She thought she would rip their heads off if they dared to do it. Just then she pulled herself back and remembered that he was busy with important business at the meeting, but she didn't even know how this kind of sect head meeting went. Such girls who are referred to as sisters-in-law usually don't get along much with their husbands' sisters. A younger student distracted her mentor and asked if she was circulating chi correctly. The girl distractedly replied that that was correct and let the student try again. But the babe noted that she has talent and maybe she's had enough of performing this action. The master replied to her that if she told her to continue, then the follower must do so unquestioningly. The girl didn't understand why they were scolding her if the mentor herself was distracted. Watching the result, Dungli was proud of her student, for she had mastered the chi circulation method in just a couple of days. You could tell by the little girl that she was very tired. Her master clapped her hands and said she definitely had potential. Then the girl got excited and asked if she too could accompany the hero when she grew up. Then Dungli got angry and thought about why everyone wanted to follow her brother. Memories of her childhood reminded the girl that she had also always wanted to spend time only with him. But to the little girl, she replied that in normal situations you can't go down the mountain. She was very surprised and asked why. Because Xiao Chu was a closed-door disciple, that was the last one. But the girl didn't bother and clarified why the last student couldn't go down the mountain, to which the mentor sighed and calmly replied that there were no doors. Dungli thought to herself that until the little one became a strong cultivator, she dare not dishonor her. But seeing the distraught child, she thought she was being too hard on her. Suddenly the girl perked up and said she understood everything. The head told her about living in solitude. The teacher rushed to find out what else the master had told her. He was saying that the solitary life is not so important. It is important to realize a simple truth. The truth is that when a dragon comes out of hibernation, its single roar can shake 1,000 mountains. Then Dungli walked over to the girl and hugged her tightly. She said the little girl would live with her on the mountain until she was old. Suddenly, a strange object appeared in the sky. Dungli thought her brother had returned, but in the sky, she saw a guy hovering on a flying sword. She realized that someone from the Sword Clan was approaching them. It's worth delving a little deeper into the history of this clan and the distribution of functionality in it. Such a sect is a high-class sect. From its name, we can understand that the name comes from those who swing swords. Like any such sect, this one has a ranking system. The disciples are divided into external, internal, and direct. Outer disciples have bronze swords. Internal holders have silver weapons. Well, the golden swords belong to the direct disciples. The character who suddenly flew into the Mo clan was of the rank of direct followers. That is, he was a disciple of the elder himself. Dungli looked at her guest and realized that he must have already crossed the second boundary and was in the middle of the third. In that case, she can defeat him, but first she should hide her level and see how he reacts. The girl couldn't understand why he still hadn't come downstairs. After a while, she noticed that he was using a sword shout. He told her to greet him and show proper respect for a direct student. This guy's behavior was similar to Cheoja's, but in this case, Dungli just wanted to beat him. Xiao Chu also noticed this behavior and said that she wanted to beat up this guy. Mentor laughed and said the little girl had read her mind. Finally, she said that you can't be so disrespectful and you have to greet your guest. Dungli sensed her brother approaching and realized that she wouldn't have to cope alone. The immediate student turned out to be Chen Xiao. He didn't understand what was wrong with the guys and why he wasn't welcomed. He was Elder's personal disciple and Yu Yue's best friend. How dare the Mo clan members treat him with such disdain? He flew into this territory by chance and decided that they wouldn't get cultivation resources by showing such disrespect. Suddenly, he saw Luo Bing, who was flying with her master and was dumbfounded by her beauty. He couldn't tear his gaze away and wondered who this beautiful girl who looked like a snow lotus flower was. Seeing her companion, he looked over his clothes and concluded that he belonged to the Mo clan. Upon realizing this, he thought that the trip to this area hadn't been in vain after all. Seeing Keoj in the glow of the setting sun, the guest wondered how he could be so damn good. He thought the guy was using some kind of trick. He wished he could learn to do it himself to be that attractive. Noticing Luo Bing's gaze, he tried to pull himself together and wanted to show her his position. After all, a direct disciple of the Sword Sect was a high status. The guy finally said who he was, and added that he was a disciple of the second elder, a cultivator of the second boundary level, Chen Xiao. After introducing himself, the guy expected the girl to praise him highly, and this guy from the Mo clan would just be numb with fear. But it did not happen in response. The beautiful lady looked at her companion with loving eyes, and the latter in his turn just looked back at him. After that, they flew upwards, continuing on their way. The Sword Clan disciples simply froze in shock. Suddenly, the realization came to him that he had been ignored. However, such treatment was not just outrageous, it was intolerable. After catching up with them, he said he wanted to ask who they were. In response, Cheoj waved his fingers and the water itself began to rise from its banks. The guy couldn't understand what was going on around him. Our hero calmly replied to the guy that the clan head Mo Lu Chaoge was standing in front of him. This angered his interlocutor. He couldn't understand how the head of a minor sect could say "before me" to him. After all, he was a direct disciple of the Sword Clan. He thought that although he wanted to learn the reception from this guy, he was too rough. So he would use the name of his clan to pressure him. He further asked Headlu why he was being disrespected so much, since he was sent by his sect. Cheoj calmly interjected as the guy called him. Tensing up, the boy repeated that he was addressing the head of Lu. The hero further clarified the stranger's position. Getting even more indignant, he switched to shouting and reminded him that he was a direct disciple of the Sword Clan. Finally, the master noted that an apprentice always remains an apprentice, no matter what clan he is in. Then noted that an apprentice has no right to teach the clan head. The guest's mind was full of thoughts. He couldn't figure out if the guy was serious or if he was just a fool. It was often the case that disciples would eventually become stewards or elders. Moreover, a personal disciple would more often than not become a great cultivator and cross the fifth boundary. But this little sect leader is not at all trying to please him or suck up to him. Dungli watched this conversation and realized that her brother was at it again. Guest noted that if a guy doesn't try to suck up to him, it means he has phenomenal powers. We should find out what they are. Suddenly he became serious and began to pierce Cheoj with his gaze. The one realized that the guest wanted to check his cultivation level and allowed him to do so. After reviewing the information, he said that he used spiritual vision. Lu has the first boundary, the fifth heavenly layer. The one only smirked in response and asked if he was sure of his vision. Suddenly Cheoj soared into the air and began to perform a meditation ritual, which surprised the guest. While in this state, he instantly began to cultivate additional heavenly layers. He first traversed the sixth celestial layer, almost immediately followed by the 7th. Next, he asked Chen Xiao what he thought of his strength now. The guy didn't even know what to answer. He only thought about the fact that Cheoj had hidden his cultivation level so carefully that he couldn't see through the veil. A delighted Dungli looked at her brother and couldn't believe that he had crossed another milestone again. She couldn't hide her emotions and smiled as she thought about him staying the same. Moments from her childhood flashed through her mind, and she realized that she had always admired him. There was no one in this world who could compare to him. Cheoj remembered that in his past life this guy named Chen Xiao was quite famous. Namely, he was a minor character who often ran errands. Every chance he got, he'd show off. But he wasn't very good at it, so he didn't seem cool, just pissed off everyone around him. He was also always running after Yu Yue, sucking up to him and trying to please him. Because of his constant showing off, he was always getting into trouble, counting on Yu Yue to save him. Even though he was doing nonsense, he was a canonical gore partner, which is what helped move the storyline forward. Realizing all this, Cheoj thought that it wasn't worth wasting the experience points he had saved up for over 20 years on him. In this game, it is important to properly manage your resources, and you should spend them on such global tasks as recognizing the sword. The hero realized that he was already able to scare the enemy half to death, and that was easy enough. But he had come to give resources, so he should leave them here. He told him to follow him and set off. The man stood stunned for a moment but quickly agreed with the master. Suddenly, he saw what Cheoj was traveling on. It was Elder Ning's unique flying artifact, a leaf boat. Initially, he thought the boat was a fake, but he noted that it was of sufficient quality. Suddenly, he stopped himself and remembered something. In Elder Ning and Yue's last return, they had descended on another artifact. But how could that be? Was his opponent really the mysterious senior fellow student Yue had told him about? This time, when the guy was sent on a journey, he was told to not only distribute resources to the minor sects, but also to find out who this mysterious disciple was. Yu Yue once told a comrade that he has a nemesis in one of the lower sects. He considers him to be the main opponent in his life. He hadn't thought of him in the last couple years, but after the last time he'd been back with his aunt, he'd thought of the guy again. He said that although his sword precognition was formed, but the senior disciple's was even much stronger. Yue reported that he would try even harder to reach at least the same level. Recently, the topic of the mysterious student has become even more relevant. That's why the boy was sent to find him. The disciple asked his comrade for a long time about the whereabouts of this mysterious hero. He only learned that he lived somewhere in the south of Qingzhou in Qinglong district. Despite the fact that there are a lot of sects in this area, the guy immediately realized that he had met the one in question. He realized that from this day forward, he and Yu Yue would have one secret in common. The very thought of it excited and pleased the lad. Luo Bin noticed that the young man kept looking at her master's butt. She reported it to her mentor and said she would cover her master from prying eyes. The hero thought that if the stranger dared to do something indecent, he would tear him to pieces. Luo Bin clarified, what exactly does he mean? Could it possibly be something vulgar? But the mentor sharply replied to her that one more such assumption and he would kick her out of the sect. The girl thought to herself that she had assumed something like that about the gentleman in vain. She had coveted her master's body for so many years that no one would dare take it from her. Suddenly, a huge bird swooped down on their leaf boat. It also hit the hero, hitting him in the face. This bird was driven by a young girl who was behaving frivolously and drinking a strange beverage. Cheoj recognized her immediately and extended his hand towards her. Not holding back his emotions of astonishment, the boy could only mutter, "Master," gazing admiringly after him. But the girl quickly flew onward, paying no attention to the incident. Cheoj thought that their fate had not yet come since she had appeared in this neighborhood, but they would definitely see each other again one day. Watching from below, Dongli and Xiaochu assumed that the surprised master would fall headfirst straight down. After a moment, that's exactly what happened. The girls laughed and high-fived each other. Meanwhile, a meeting of elders was taking place in Gangjinmen. The head of one of the clans was saying that the other participants kept dodging. They should decide on how much they would give to the Mo clan. Another elder said that he had a plan to show his respect to the head without losing too many resources. The others rejoiced and told me to tell them about the idea as soon as possible. He suggested taking a little from everyone and sending all the resources with the help of a beautiful student, but they didn't approve of the idea, because they realized that Cheoj could not be taken like that, and one could die for it. Meanwhile, nearby in the house, the women of the clan had gathered and decided that men could not be counted on in this matter. The head said that there is no issue that cannot be solved with a body. If there is, then 2 bodies are needed. One of the girls abruptly volunteered to help. She reported that she had many talents and was beautiful both inside and out, especially since they had met Cheoj before. But the head only resented to herself that no one had thought of her. Does this trashy girl really want to bypass her mentor? The young girl really hoped that she would be noticed after all, and the downpour of good fortune would not bypass her. However, abruptly, a flying sword appeared in the sky, and everyone realized that the clan head had received an important message. The woman realized from the look of the sword that the message came from a friend of the master, namely an elder from the Middle Hundred clan. The only thing she didn't understand was what made him write a letter at such a late hour, but after reading it, she realized that it had come at a very good time. She realized that she had been friends with him for a reason, and sent a servant to the head of Gangjinmen to discuss an important matter. The happy news was that the second elder's direct disciple had come to divorce them. The clan heads were very happy and thought that luck had finally smiled on them. To the disciples, they told them to put aside the matter of sharing resources for the Mo clan and find this hero. For the girls, the head told them to find a student and become friends with him, even using the harshest methods. The servants bowed to the heads of the clan and went about the task. The girls whispered amongst themselves that if someone like that became her husband, she had an excellent chance of rising in rank. Perhaps she could even become an elder's wife in the future. The girls realized that it would go to the one who would succeed first. Each used her main talents and skills. The boys, on the other hand, reasoned that they were not that superficial, so they wished they could find him first, bow out and become brothers. Showing their charm, the girls disagreed with this opinion and said they wouldn't mind chatting with their brother, who would approach them right away. After these words, all the clan brothers rushed towards the girls, trying to show signs of attention. While the other clans were in turmoil, the Mo clan remained quietly in the shadows. Upon Brother and Luo Bing's return home, Dongli and Xiao Chu greeted them, smiling sweetly. Chen Xiao, who had also been hit by the huge bird, finally woke up. He was furious and couldn't believe that the Mo sect had shown him such disrespect. He suddenly saw not only Luo Bing but also Dongli and couldn't take his eyes off. They looked beautiful. How could such a small sect have such a great treasure in the form of beautiful girls? And why are they always hanging around this guy? He began to push himself away from such thoughts and bring himself to reality, thinking that he can't be jealous of the clan since he is in the strongest sword sect, the apprentice of the second elder and best friend of the future most powerful man in the world. It's just a small sect. The guy couldn't see through the clan head's barrier, but these female disciples were driving him crazy. Suddenly he saw that Dongli had reached the second milestone of the 9th heaven layer, that she was almost at the stage of completion. How could this be possible? She is only Keyoj's younger sister. She has a strength that neither he nor the other sword clan disciples can match. He realizes that the Mo clan may be hiding many talents and may have other secrets as well. The brother praised his little sister for showing him in a good light in front of the guest. The clan members turned around and motioned for the young man to walk into the main hall with them. The hero realized that now was the best time to finally subdue Chen Xiao. Our hero realized that the guest had not yet bid farewell to the resources he had brought for the clan. Dongli showed her hospitality, but thought to herself that some petty disciple of the sword sect was incapable of comparing to her brother. After seeing the beauty of the local nature, the guest remarked that it was far more impressive than the 100 middle hundred sects he had been able to visit. There was only one thought in his mind. Was this Lu Chaoge, the mysterious senior student Yue had been telling him about? When all the clan members and their guests had made their way to the main hall, Chaoj motioned for everyone to sit down. The guy took a seat at the table and noticed that tea would be poured for him by the beautiful Luo Bin. Out of breath, he set himself up for a pleasant time. Perhaps he could even smell her pleasant body odor. Closing his eyes, he waited for that unearthly scent, but he realized that time was passing and he couldn't feel it. When he looked in the girl's direction, he realized she was pouring him tea from across the room. The other clan members couldn't understand the girl's strange behavior and why she moved so far away from the guest. He would be traumatized. The guy thought she was cold like that to all men, so he shouldn't take her behavior too personally. But after a second, he noticed the girl was too close to the head of the clan, pouring him tea. He couldn't understand, was he? A direct disciple of the sword sect and the future pillar of this clan? Really that unattractive? Keoj suddenly started coughing heavily, surprising the guest. The man didn't take the hint and asked if the head was all right. The master thought to himself, what was the matter with him? Why was he still not giving him the money? Did he really want to stay with him for dinner? Suddenly, Luo Bing asked the senior disciple what was the purpose of him coming to their clan. Hearing this, the guest realized it was time to get down to business. He thought to himself that he would be able to impress the girl, since she called him a senior student. He said that he had come on the orders of the clan leader to distribute the necessary resources. He had prepared something for my clan. Taking out a unique ring, he reported that inside was a spirit stone, a miracle medicine, and processing materials. Without giving any sign inside, the master was happy that he had obtained materials that he could use to improve the skills he had learned from Auntie Ning. Next, he used his power to take the treasure brought to him without hands. The boy noticed it and became numb with shock. He saw the head using the power of heaven and earth. Observing the power of magic, he realized that Keoj was an enlightened one. At this point, he was almost certain that he had met the same mysterious senior co-student that Yua was talking about. The master, on the other hand, was thinking about the fact that they were finally getting rich and would be able to apply the resources they had brought. He asked the guest if he had any other task from the sect besides bringing resources. If a clan received resource privileges, they had to repay the Sword Clan by doing tasks they would tell them to do. The guest said that he had a mission. This time he was traveling because demonic cultivators had appeared. All the members of the Mo clan were very surprised and even scared when they heard this news. But Head Lu jumped up abruptly, grabbed his sword, and asked the guy where they were. He couldn't believe his eyes. After all, everyone else was very frightened, but not this master. He thought about the fact that true sword cultivators like him were not afraid of a battle with a strong opponent. Demonic cultivators are not monsters at all. They are ordinary people who have purposely mixed their blood with monster blood. Because of this mixture, they became incredibly powerful. But at the same time, there was also a side effect. They became ruthless cannibals. In some places, they might also be called devil cultivators. The combat power of these cultivators is several times stronger than normal cultivators due to the fact that they have merged their blood with monsters. Unlike the demons of the celestial realm, they do not possess any intelligence. However, they are very bloodthirsty and aggressive. The more they eat, the stronger they become. For this reason, where there are devilish cultivators, there is also great calamity. Therefore, they are considered invincible in the heavenly realm. Only a few outstanding geniuses dare to face them. The more victims they have eaten, the stronger they become, so no one can imagine how powerful they really are. There's also a race of demons. They are different from those who persistently cultivated and became immortal. But there is no room in our story to describe them. All cultivators make sure to warn their disciples of a possible encounter with a devil cultivator. If they see one, they should just run away and not make them stronger at the expense of their lives. The Mo clan's guest said that the Sword Sect had warned about the demon cultivator at the second boundary. It is followed by several monsters. Inside himself, Keoj realized that this was not the monster he was looking for. That one was much stronger. The guy was surprised that the head was even upset to hear this. The master decided to fight a demonic cultivator to elicit information about that monster from him. Afterward, the host said that if any help was required of him, he was willing to give it. The boy noticed some sort of trick on the part of the clan head, but he couldn't figure out what it was. He said that he would be happy to have Head Lu accompany him. On the way, he wanted to find out how strong the master was and to find out if he was the mysterious disciple. If he's a weak guy, he can kill the demon on his own and regain his dignity. A monitor with an activated task popped up in front of the hero. For its fulfillment, he will receive 50,000 experience points and a ticket for one artifact of yellow rank. Naturally, he gladly agreed to activate the assignment. He further told the guest that he agreed to accompany him and defeat this devil cultivator. Chen Xiao heard the guy talking too arrogantly, but he must tolerate it for the sake of his goal. The Mo clan's mentor thought that mountains were for immortals. This place belongs to his sect. Suddenly, Dungli remembered that she had forgotten to ask her brother how the three clans' conference had gone. Looking at her student, she couldn't understand why she wouldn't leave while she was so close to her brother, but the master told his maid to tell the teacher herself how the meeting came about. Ta gladly agreed, arousing even more of her mentor's anger. The young girl began to chirp about how her great lord had struck fear into the nearby clans and strengthened the power of their sect. Inside himself, the guy was incredibly proud of himself after such praise. His sister was muttering something to herself about some prediction. Her brother noticed this and hurried to clarify what she was whispering. She replied that there was nothing, but she thought to herself that out of 1,000 predictions, she had gone through all of them and had not noticed the danger to them. She asked the abbot if she could go with them tomorrow to kill the demonic cultivator, for she was very worried about her brother. He noticed that Dungli was worried about him. He was very touched by it, and he fell silent. This silence made her sister angry. She couldn't understand his reaction and thought that if he refused the request, she would pinch his ears, but her brother said she could do as she decided for herself. He realized that it was useless to argue with the girl, especially if he couldn't handle the task. He could use her as his weapon. Luo Bing watched this and thought to herself, how could she leave her mentor and master in trouble? She ran sharply after her mentors, but Dungli turned around and immediately cut her off, telling her she wasn't allowed. The girl said she didn't even finish her sentence, but the mentor answered her sharply. That you can't means you can't. Keoj moved closer to the maid and informed her that she shouldn't go with them this time. The abbots pointed out that the girl's current cultivation level would not be enough to defeat this monster. Therefore, she should train more. The girl noted that her master hasn't made a breakthrough in a long time. Therefore, his current level is the same as hers. But today he did it again, and he did it very quickly. He's in too much of a hurry. She thought that if the gap in their levels was too great, she would become a burden to him. The girl realized that she had to try even harder to stand by her master and become the one he needed. In the evening, the hero went to meditate again to gain more experience. This time, like all the others, the process caused him incredible pain. He thought that other people pay with points or their sanity to increase their level. He had to pay with his life. The suffering technique was a real torment for him. He had only gotten a few points, but blood was gushing from everywhere. Suddenly he felt a strange atmosphere in the room. He realized that the spirit of the graveyard maid had come to him. He asked what she needed, and she in turn beckoned him to follow. Once in the cemetery, he rushed to find out what had happened, and he said that if she wanted his seed, now was not the best time to do it. But the spirit only pointed him to a building. Cheoj realized that Chen Xiao's house was there. Suddenly the spirit took the shape of a knife and began to swing it in the air. The master realized she was hinting at killing him, but he did not agree with her. However, the spirit did not calm down, and the hero realized that the servant girl was not referring to Xiao, but someone else. As he continued to carefully observe the spirit, he realized that it was a demonic cultivator. It finally came to him that the ghost was asking him to bring her the corpse of this diabolical monster. The master clarified. Did she really need him to bring a whole monster body? The spirit showed an exploding head, and the hero realized that the ghost didn't need it. He told him that demonic cultivators had incredible strength. Therefore, he would have to use all of his strength and would most likely have to cut off the head of the foul creatures. Given the difficulty of such work, the hero offered to increase his pay considerably. After that, the maid hovered again, but the master said that if she didn't pay him this time, Before he could finish, he saw another scroll being held out to him by a spirit. He was incredibly excited and tried to grab this treasure with interest. He didn't have time to do so, however, for the ghost quickly took his gift back. The hero realized that the maid would only give it to him after he completed the task. She wasn't as stupid as he thought. Suddenly, he realized that his assistant wanted to give him a scroll that carried a low-quality blue-level technique. Only mid-level clans could obtain such a rare artifact. The value of the scroll is much higher than the death of a devil cultivator. Considering the reward that shines for completing the mission, the hero will be able to kill 2 birds with 1 stone. Despite spending a lot of money in his past life, the guy was only able to obtain a medium-quality blue-level shooting equipment. The essence of the technique was that the shot resembled a dragon emerging from the water. Perhaps the fall cicada technique is so named because each beat is similar to the sounds of cicadas descending. After thinking for a while, Cheoj said that just for the sake of their good relationship, he would take this case. In fact, he needed to master this technique. He didn't know how many more artifacts his servant could give him, but he knew he had to do everything he could to get as many as he could. Speaking of the mission, the master decided to ask the spirit why he needed the corpse of a demonic cultivator. The ghost remained silent. Then the hero resented him for pretending to be deaf again. Walking away, Cheoj thought about the fact that he was being used this day as if he was some kind of thing. In the morning, his sister appeared at the master's door and told him it was time for them to set out. He asked if he had come so early to see his brother off from the palace as soon as possible. She laughed and said she just wanted to feel a little villainous. Interrupting his meditation, Cheoj said he was ready to go. He asked if his companion was ready. She replied in agreement and said she had brought more things to sleep with her. Brushing her teeth, secret weapons, a sacrifice, and more. The guy smirked and noted again that she always took everything too seriously. Sister asked to call that disciple so they could go on their way as soon as possible. The master used the wind call and shouted, "That disciple." It echoed throughout the neighborhood. In his bed, a guy woke up from this call and indignantly said that he was the wrong disciple. His name was Chen Xiao. Walking through the clan's territory, the boy remembered that the gates used to be guarded by protective seals, but now they had fallen completely into disrepair and were not performing their proper tasks. Sister saw the look in her mentor's eyes and said that she had already started studying seal magic, so she would soon be able to restore these locks. The boy remembered that his sister doesn't have a single attribute on a 10, but she has all the attributes on a 9. She learns new knowledge with ease, but they didn't have the resources to train her. He patted her on the head and told her that he would be sure to find the resources to pay her tuition. After all, she wants them to feel safe. It was the responsibility of the older brother to educate the younger sister as well. The master thought to himself that it would be nice if the nubs came sooner. At the end, these guys are great workers and are the most convenient to use. In front of the Mo clan's mentors, their guest appeared. He quickly ran towards them, shouting his name. The guys only stated that after his appearance they could finally hit the road, but the guy hurriedly stopped them and asked how they would go on without him. They didn't know the way after all. He told him to watch his movements carefully, for he was about to track down a demonic cultivator. He took out a strange thing and began to perform the ritual. Just as he was about to explain what it was, Keoj interrupted him. Master said that it was a blood vessel used to trace its owner. There is no information he doesn't know. The boy is very angry because Keoj has once again ruined his reputation. He urgently needs to do something to restore it. His sister was equally surprised. She rushed to find out how her brother had such knowledge, as there was no such thing in their clan. In fact, the mentor himself saw it for the first time. But once on a stream, he saw some people using it in a special way in some situations. Suddenly, the guest pointed to the amazing thing and said it started vibrating. He explained that the closer they are to the owner of this item, the more the vessel will vibrate. Seeing the strange item in Chen Xiao's hands, the sister hurriedly asked her brother what special way of using it was. The boy fidgeted and didn't know what to say. After all, the vulgar truth could spoil a child's bright mind. Instead of the truth, he said that such an object is meant for hammering nails. They are handy to do it with. Suddenly, Xiao stated that the object started vibrating too much. This meant that they were already very close to their destination. Dungli noticed that they were flying through a flame forest. This place was incredibly dangerous and held many surprises. She remembered that the last time her brother had gotten a mind-changing herb in this forest for killing a monster. She informed the mentor that there were a lot of monsters in this forest, so a demonic cultivator would be incredibly strong. Before she could finish, Cheoj told her to come down. He wanted to crush the villain's head as soon as possible. The sister was not surprised at this answer, for she knew that her brother was never afraid of anything. Chen Xiao thought about the fact that if one were to start fighting a demon right in this forest, it would be very dangerous. The moment the battle begins, they will be surrounded by monsters. The demonic cultivator will summon them from all over the forest. But what does Head Lu think about it? He saw the determination in the master's eyes. He told him to go down and fight the demon to see its cracked skull. The guy was puzzled at first, but then he realized that this was how true sword cultivators should behave. They should be fearless. Keoj realized that not only was there a demonic cultivator in the forest, there were also many other monsters. This meant that he would be able to gain a lot of experience for this battle. Once inside the thicket of the forest, he thought about the monsters and cultivator surrounding him, for he was very determined. The object in Chen Xiao's hand vibrated violently. This meant that the person they were looking for was very close. The clan head told his apprentice to show him the road that leads to the demon. The boy was very surprised because even the heads of the middle clans had no right to treat him like that. But he was going to show what he could do in battle. Suddenly, the object in his hands began to practically burst out of the young man's grasp. Then he warned the others that the monster was incredibly close. Looking at the vibration, Cheoj thought, what would happen if he stuck this thing into the demon's neck? Perhaps it would fly into the air. Remembering his parents, he thought about the fact that at one time he didn't have such a vessel. Otherwise, he would have found and killed that monster long ago. He also remembered the maid's task, but he realized that it would be difficult to fulfill it. Beasts eat each other's bodies, even if they are of the same species. The only thing they leave behind is the head. The body is likely to be devoured and not a bite left. Dungli performed a special technique that helped her conceal her key. The apprentice watched the process and realized that he too knew how to use the technique, but not as skillfully as the girl did. He went on to say that since their key was hidden, they could get close and just cut off. Hearing some noises in the bushes, Cheoj didn't let the boy speak, put a hand on his shoulder and told him not to move. The boy was indignant and asked why the head was stopping him. He's just going to chop off the monster's head and they can have a victory. Clan head Mo said that they needed to behave more carefully since the beast had already spotted them. They saw several pairs of eyes in the bushes. After that, 2 monsters, a black flying dog and a scorpion lion flew out at them. Dungli hurriedly drew her sword, and the Sword Clan disciple cried out in horror about seeing monsters. Cheoj asked what was the big deal. He said he just had to cut them up and the matter was solved. Without taking his sword out of its sheath, he flew straight at the flying dog, completely unafraid of the consequences. Using his water magic, Cheoj boldly attacked the enemy, dealing one blow after another. The apprentice watched the clan head and admired his courage. He realized that this was what a true cultivator should be like. Why was he so afraid? At one point, the beast began to attack the master. Then Chen shouted at him to move away and said he would cover him. The hero noted that this kid wasn't as bad as he first thought he was. After a long battle, our hero informed the monster that he was finally ready to kill him. The Sword Sect Elder's personal disciple and Yu Yue's best friend looked at the Mo clan's clan head, and realized that he couldn't give in to him. After that, he jumped on the beast and tried to damage it with chaotic movements. He did not succeed, however, and the people around him looked at him as if he were a fool. Chaoj realized that if he didn't use sword precognition, he wouldn't be able to deal significant damage to the monster. Furthermore, the demonic cultivator was sitting in ambush and preparing for a surprise attack. The situation was such that the master decided not to hold back his strength. Sister was very happy that Chaoj had finally used his abilities. After all, even with a weak opponent, one should always be on guard. The Sword Clan disciple couldn't believe that he was seeing with his own eyes a fully formed sword pre-consciousness. At that moment, he realized that the master was that mysterious disciple. While Yu Yue's pre-consciousness was just forming at the same age, Chaoj's was already formed. Only such a guy could be called an incomparable swordmaster and compete with senior fellow student Yue on an equal footing. He further thought about the fact that both of these guys are incomparable masters, but if they are both in the same generation, doesn't that mean his art is about to take shape as well? The beast meanwhile watched Chen Xiao cheer and couldn't believe that it could attack him at any second. Then he threw himself at the guy, realizing that if he didn't take this opportunity now, it might not be there from here on out. Noticing this, the guy was incredibly frightened, and with his mind he created a protective dome around himself. Chaoj was surprised that a level 30 was defeated by a level 25. Did he really have that much faith in the Sword Sect's defense? After that, Chaoj used his sword's precognition power and told the monster to watch what a man tempered in blood could do. After stunning the monster, Lu told the Sword Clan disciple to never take his opponent too lightly. The young man bowed to the master and thanked him for his valuable recommendation. The mentor smiled and noted that this kid had almost submitted to him already. Suddenly, both men noticed something very large and scary approaching. They realized that the demonic cultivator was already near them. He turned out to be Luo Ling, a huge 26th-level rhinoceros monster. He asked, did a weak level 1 cultivator really want to kill his doggy in front of him? He argued that this task was beyond the guy's ability. He had overestimated his strength. The demonic cultivator told his dog to eat the clan head. After that, the monster would have even bigger wings than before. He himself wanted to pursue a disciple of the Sword Clan. After choosing him as his target, he didn't hide his anger and aggressiveness. While defending himself from the monsters, Chen asked the demon, did he really underestimate the Mosek sect head so much? The latter replied that he considered him to be trash, since he hadn't even reached the second boundary. Could he really consider him a competitor? The guy didn't relent and bragged further about how someone like this demon doesn't even have a close idea of what Lu is really like. Watching the boy's behavior, Dungli realized that he too had contracted a strange disease from her brother. In the air, the monster moved chaotically, causing Chaoj to ask if he was a flying ant. He decided that it was time to use a strong strike even if it would use up mana. After the blow was struck, the monster dog whined and fussed. After a few minutes, he was definitely defeated. The demonic cultivator watched this and couldn't believe that a second boundary monster had been defeated by some pathetic kid. The Sword Clan disciples said that he had no doubt about it, because soon, Chaoj would become the second in the entire world. The first, of course, would be his unrivaled friend Yu Yue. A notification popped up on the hero's monitor that he had successfully killed the monster and was getting 20,000 experience points for it. The guy was incredibly excited, because he had the opportunity to raise his level. It only cost 18,000. From the 17th level, the master instantly moved to the 18th level. Smiling, he said it was incredibly satisfying to feel full health and mana. The companions were completely shocked that the mentor was able to cross the boundary again right in front of their eyes. Her sister thought about the fact that if her brother continued to cross the line so quickly, she would end up being behind him forever. But it made her happy to think that she would be able to spend her whole life with her brother. But suddenly she remembered Luo Bin and became angry. She didn't understand why daughters-in-law even existed in nature, and the Sword Clan disciple wondered why Head Lu had opened the first boundary, the 8th heavenly layer, right now. He realized that the master wanted to defeat the demonic cultivator just at this point. Suppressing cultivation during a duel was a way for training. The demon stated that he didn't understand why the guy thought the wizard was number 2, since they were both just going to be part of him now. He was going to absorb Lu first, and after that he was going to take on the Sword Sect disciple as well. Chaoj called out to the demon and asked why the freak was hiding his true face under his hood, not showing it to the humans. His mentor urged him to fight, for to him he is just a flying ant who clearly overestimates his strength. The demonic cultivator got angry and told the steel rhinoceros to kill this impudent man. The one lunged sharply at the guy with undisguised aggression. Suddenly his attack was repulsed, and the demon realized that something had not gone according to plan. With a single swing of his sword, Chen Xiao was able to stop the monster's attack. He said that the beasts had no right to approach the head of Lu. He thought to himself, however, that he had used up all of his energy on that move. Thank God no one noticed how hard it was for him. But Dongli saw that the guy was using spiritual power, so no one would notice how difficult it was for him to perform the defense. He was acting just like her brother. She realized that this guy was also able to know the essence and use the wind technique. The demonic cultivator was outraged that his steel rhino had fallen right in front of him. They were about to reach peak cultivation together after all. After that, he finished his beast and told him to rest in peace by piercing its flesh. He also said that he would surely avenge him. Dongli and Chen Xiao realized that the cultivator was going to extract the demonic crystal from the rhinoceros in order to absorb its power. The demon told him to wait until he had dealt with the couple, after which he would be sure to honor the beast by using the blood of an entire village. After that, he tried to absorb the crystal. He wanted the beast to become a part of him and continue to live in him, but he didn't have time to do so, for Keoj simply ripped the stone out of the villain's hands with the power of his magic. The guy noticed that mourning the deceased while devouring his corpse was too much. The world of demonic cultivators was very crazy. The sister noted that her brother's ability to control the water was getting stronger and stronger, and the apprentice realized that the wizard's abilities also included the fact that he could pick up objects without using his hands. He expected such magic from him because the guy is incredibly powerful. The demon was incredibly angry and demanded his prey back, for it belonged only to him. But our hero smiled and said that in a few moments he would have his body too. At least it was necessary to fulfill the servant's task. Meeting the eyes of his companions with incomprehension, he hastened to say that it was not at all what they thought. The enraged demonic cultivator said that the clan head had just forced him to take drastic measures. After that, he soared into the air and told all the monsters in this forest to awaken. The Sword Clan disciple was greatly frightened when he realized that all the monsters of the forest had awakened. He said that if they didn't defeat the cultivator now, they would have to fight all of them at once. Dongli lost count as she tried to count the number of creatures. She shouted to her brother that they were getting bigger by the minute. The demon said he was ready to use all his power, and after he killed them, he would destroy all the villages within a radius of 50 kilometers. Suddenly, a water ball appeared in front of the demonic cultivator's face, from which a hand reached out to him. He could have tried to fight the hand that held him by the throat, but his hands were busy controlling the monsters. Keoj continued to apply pressure, and noted that at this minute, there were no monsters that could protect their boss. Realizing that imminent death would soon await him, the demon begged the clan head for mercy. He even swore that he would never harm another human being again. But the master was adamant. He didn't need more because there were many people whose lives had already been ruined by the demon, many orphans and dead. Remembering the day his parents died, the boy clenched his hand tightly and finished the thing off. Dongli exhaled a sigh of relief. She had noticed that this was incredibly dangerous, and she was about to pull out her weapon to help her brother. Chen Xiao couldn't understand why at this moment. He felt a strength that could only be compared to his teacher's power. Suddenly an idea popped into the guy's head. He couldn't believe it, but he had no other options. His thoughts were saying that Head Lu was special, and some great cultivator was secretly guarding him. Just then, he pulled himself back and thought that the master was already too powerful and independent. Why would he need someone else's protection? In the next second, another thought knocked into his bright head. He decided that the clan leader was just really worried about them. The master only pretended that he didn't care about ordinary people. Then he sent a great cultivator to protect his disciple from the demonic cultivator's attack. Noticing the change in Chen Xiao's mood, his sister couldn't understand what was wrong with him. He had either become numb with fear or had gone mad. A virtual monitor popped up again in front of our hero, with a message that he had completed the task. He got incredibly excited and selected the Get button. Considering that the Sword Clan disciple was just a tool, Keoj received a full reward of 50,000 points. In addition, he was also entitled to a yellow-level artifact certificate. He realized that he also had a reward for the demon's body, and there are many things in the storage ring. He decided to see if the monster had any treasures as well. A special item quest showed up on the screen. The hero could collect 2 items, unlock the hidden plot, and get the secret mission. After that, the guy told his sister to clear the battlefield and remove the corpses of the monsters he had killed. She happily agreed. Examining the artifact obtained from the corpse of a demonic cultivator, the master didn't understand how it could be used to open a hidden task. He heard Chen Xiao's voice behind him. The young man was saying that he was incredibly grateful to him this time. The mentor said he had nothing to thank him for. He wondered to himself when he would fail. The task had already been completed, what more did he need? The disciple started to talk about the demonic cultivator's body, but he didn't have time to finish. Cheoj informed him that he could take the head to report back to the clan, and he needed the demon's corpse for his own purposes. The guy quickly agreed and said he would only take the head. Lu was pleased that he had quickly grasped the information he needed. Chen realized that he definitely wouldn't be able to win alone. In addition, he was sure that he had found the mysterious fellow student, and now he and Yue had one secret for two. He was exhilarated at the very thought that he would best understand his older fellow student. Suddenly, his thoughts were interrupted by the voice of Head Lu. He called out to a student who was laughing like an idiot, and the boy immediately realized that it was about him. Cheoj gave the head to the boy and said he could leave, but the young man murmured that he wanted to ask his teacher more questions and learn from his experience. Clan Chief Mo sighed heavily and told him to fly after him and question everything on the way. As they continued on their way, Xiao asked why Head Lu had never once pulled his sword from its sheath during the entire battle. The head calmly replied to him that a demonic cultivator wasn't worthy of it. That surprised the boy. Such a powerful demon and not worthy of knowing the power of Lu's sword? Looking at the grandeur of the master, the guy thought that this was exactly what sword cultivators should be like. Cheoj, on the other hand, noted that when the disciple appeared, he had thought that his path wouldn't be too wide, but now he had changed his mind. But all Dungli noticed was that another person had contracted the disease of narcissism that her brother had, but the most important thing to her was that her brother was safe. She turned to her immortality and asked it to guard him with her. It was called the Heavenly Palace of White Jade, 12 towers and 5 cities. The goddess stroked the girl's head, braided her braids, and gave her immortality. The name given by the girl's brother was so wonderful. Immortality. It meant that a sister could live forever by her brother's side. Finally, when the boys returned to their home clan, they noticed a cluster of people at the entrance. The girl asked who it was and what they wanted. The hero replied that they were people from Gungjinmen and Chushuimen. The clan representatives noticed the direct disciple of the sword sect. They looked everywhere for him, and he was behind Head Lu. They were greatly frightened, for they realized that this guy's connections were much wider than they could have imagined. Landing in front of the other sects, Cheoj politely asked the gentleman what the matter was. The other sect's mentor hurriedly explained that they had come for the resource distribution that occurred once every 50 years. His companion couldn't take her eyes off Cheoj, not understanding why he was so handsome. No wonder a girl from her clan volunteered to seduce him, but her favorite student is too young to take such a lowly task on her shoulders. It's up to the mentor to get the boy's attention. She began to talk about how their clan was willing to cede a large amount of materials to the Mo sect. The sword disciple said that he had a lot of experience in resource allocation, so he was willing to take this matter on. Cheoj was happy at this suggestion and thought that this guy was becoming more and more useful. The disciple was beyond happy because the clan head patted him on the shoulder, which meant that he trusted him. Lu figured this tool guy was now willing to do anything for him, even wash his cup for him after a meal. The master called after his sister, completely ignoring the other clan's mentor who was running after him. Headlin was intercepted by a sword sect disciple and told her to walk along with him. She agreed, but was very upset that she couldn't talk or touch Lu's head. The only thing the student thought about was that in completing this task, he could become even closer with his older fellow student. And if he could become friends with Cheoj, surely he would become even closer in his relationship with Yue. He only had to take one step to become his best friend. In the end, this young lad met all of our heroes' expectations and obtained many materials for their clan. In the evening, Cheoj went to the cemetery to receive the rest of the rewards. Once at his maid's grave, he announced that he had come and brought her the body of the demonic cultivator as they had agreed. Appearing before his master, the spirit held out the expected reward to him. The boy abruptly grabbed the scroll and was very glad that he was able to get his hands on it. He thought it would be better to pass on the autumn cicada technique to his sister. After all, she would not only be able to master it, but also teach it to him and their students. Furthermore, it could be considered that this technique belonged to their Mo clan. And then the young man wondered whether the wife of the head should not be in charge of the distribution of property. He was afraid that he would not be able to convince his sister to give this authority to another person. Seeing the spirit hovering over the corpse of the slain demon, Cheoj decided to wonder what it was for. Considering the fact that the servant girl was one of them, the clan had let her look at the artifact he had removed from the cultivator after his death. The acolyte made it clear that she knew exactly what her owner was holding. Before his eyes, she crushed the object and a pink crescent moon emerged from it. The guy realized he saw the sign of the purple moon in front of him. It shocked him. He remembered seeing this sign as a child when his father died. This purple moon society is directly related to the demonic cultivator who killed his parents. The master asked the maid if the artifact belonged to the Purple Moon Society. The one replied in agreement, and he realized that the demon who had killed his loved ones was probably also a member of this community. But the spirit explained that to be a member of this society, one must have two such items at once. If a demon has only one, it means that he's only a reserve member. The more such marks, the higher the status and greater the power. He asked the maid how familiar she was with the community. He thought that if his assistant knew a lot about it, surely she could help find out more about the type. But after that, the spirit hovered again. Head Lu realized that her mind was not stable. How could he have hoped to find his enemy with it? Did he not possess a mind as well? Kayoj remembered that he had heard of the Purple Moon clan in his past life. He knew of a guild that pursued this society. Every member of this guild was incredibly powerful. He was proud of his donation, but ashamed of the zero on the balance. That's why it was nicknamed the Rich Man's Guild. But at that moment, Cheoj single-handedly managed to fight the entire clan and emerged victorious. The guy told them not to use their property to challenge the hero's petty spending. The participants were shocked. There was no one stronger. But we should stop bragging and remember what's important. The Purple Moon Society. The guy was desperately trying to recall at least something, as his past life had been very informative on the subject. He realized that what the maid really wanted was not the corpse of a demonic cultivator, but this crescent moon-shaped artifact. The head said he could give it away, but the time would come and he would need to borrow the item for his own purposes. After giving the spirit the artifact, the guy decided to clarify what was good about it and what it was for. And at the same time, I decided to clarify whether he knew where he could get more such signs. You need 2 crescent moons to open the mission. It would be nice to get some clues. The spirit began to stare intently at the hero, and he asked why he was doing this. The ghost began thrashing from side to side and showing incomprehensible symbols. Cheoj realized that the servant girl hated this secret society as much as he did. Afterward, the servant made it clear that she had lost her memory, and then the head Lu realized that the maid has many more such artifacts. She wants the young man to help her remember where they might be. It was good that our hero understood what the spirit was explaining to him. It was possible to assume that the acolyte was the head of this community in the past, and was engaged in wholesale of artifacts. However, the system highlighted the player in red, which meant negative karma and killing other characters. This negated that possibility. He hastened to reassure the spirit and assured it that the deaths of his loved ones had nothing to do with the ghost. He couldn't have saved them. He decided to help him understand, thus helping himself as well. The guy said that in order for him to assist with the information, he needed the servant to give him some purple moon signs. The spirit originally wanted to check the corpse of a demonic cultivator for this symbol, but now he would have to give several of them to Kayoj. How come? The boy hurriedly explained that he didn't want to deceive the maid. If she lent him the signs, he would really get valuable information and share it with her. She thought about it and agreed to give whatever the hero needed for that purpose. He said he only needed 2 and took them into his hands. On the monitor, it appeared that the guy was able to fulfill the conditions for opening the secret plot. This pleased the head of Lu, and he was of course in a hurry to find out what it was all about. The incredible interface of the system unfolded before the hero's eyes. He realized that the information he would receive was incredibly cool. In front of him, the information that this community is one of the 3 important sects of demonic cultivators appeared. They believe that by absorbing the purple moon, they will obtain supreme power. The hero couldn't believe that this information was all the system wanted to tell him, because he had spent so much effort. He realized that he would only have to rely on himself. The purple moon must be some kind of thing that could be absorbed and become stronger. Demonic cultivators always worship what they eventually want to devour. The system reported that it would take 10 purple moon symbols to reveal more information. This surprised the hero greatly. He realized that 2 artifacts was just the initial cost. If he wanted to learn more, he would have to try harder. The guy wanted to take some more symbols from the maid, but she really resented it. That didn't stop him. Then he asked why she had become so greedy. It wasn't like he was bargaining with her when he brought her his seed. When he became successful, he would definitely not be so stingy. A notification popped up again on the monitor that the hero had met all the conditions and could see more data. The report said that every 3 years, the sect holds meetings in different parts of Qingzhou. The next time it would be next year. The hero will get the location data later. The meeting would be on the day of the winter solstice. The guy thought that all these demonic cultivators were the same as the Nubians, so he had a chance. He realized that he needed to evolve a lot in the time he had left. The day when the Nubians would arrive was very close. The hero imagined how the demonic cultivators would laugh at him if he stayed at the same level as he was now. In the event the guy is not strong enough, he will be turned into a scumbag running on handouts. Suddenly, Keoj remembered his maid. He had to tell her a few secrets just as he had promised to get her to bite the hook. He hurriedly used the technique he had learned from Kunyiki. If the master saw it now, he would marvel at the perfect execution. Thanks to this, all the symbols came together in one harmonious picture with a strange table in the center. After doing some calculations in his head for a long time, the guy informed his assistant that he could not divulge heavenly secrets. She was furious, for he had promised to tell her all her secrets in return for her help. After that, she started pushing Cheoj as if telling him to get lost after this behavior. He hurriedly explained to the maid that it wasn't that he didn't want to share at all. He just needed to gather his thoughts. Cheoj promised that once he thought it over, he would be sure to share his thoughts with the spirit. Saying goodbye to the assistant, the guy thought that this time he didn't understand at all what she wanted to tell him. After arriving home, Head Lu decided to see where the location where the community gathering would be. The location was quite far away, but the importance of killing these monsters was greater than any long road. There was plenty of time left until next year's solstice. This year it had already come, and so had Dungli's birthday. The boy persisted with painful training in order to get used to the pain. This will enable him to resist beatings in the future. He thought about the fact that when the time came, he would be invulnerable to pain. The next second his sister called out to him. He turned and saw her in an incredibly beautiful image. The winter solstice meant that it was the clan mentor's birthday and Dungli was a year older. He looked at the girl and asked if she was going to go down the mountain in that outfit. It is quite open, so she would get very cold on the way. But the girl laughed and started pulling warm clothes out of her purse. They went outside to descend the mountain and celebrate the Worldly Transformation Day. It's a celebration when a cultivator must block out all of his skills and live like an ordinary person. Unlike Dungli, Lu Cheoj didn't like to celebrate his birthday. Once inside the Mo clan's dwelling, the guys noticed how dirty and dusty it was. It was not surprising since no one had lived there for a year. The sister said they had no choice but to clean the cabin and put it in order. Suddenly, Cheoj stopped the girl and told her not to move. He said he needed to wipe her nose of the dust she had missed while cleaning. Afterward, the guy with his dusty hand did not wipe the girl's nose, but instead spread dirt all over her face. Seeing this in the mirror, Dungli got angry and shouted that she would kill him. But he said she could not kill her own brother. For dinner, the guy decided to make noodles and told the girl not to get mad at him for a silly prank. Seeing such deliciousness, the sister couldn't be angry anymore. If their father were alive, he would surely say that simple human living is the best and most comforting thing mortals have. Dungli added that he would probably add that no matter how high one's dreams were, one would always return to the simplicity of life. After that, the boys sighed sadly. The boy took a beautiful, ripe pear from his pocket and handed it to his sister. He said he had bought it on the way to get salt. The girl was very happy and thanked Cheoj. She liked pears very much. Head Lu thought to himself that he had bought the fruit out of the way, and he was not comfortable with it at all. Her brother wanted to stroke the girl's head, but he remembered that she was all grown up and wouldn't appreciate it. Noticing such a gesture, the girl herself put her hair under her brother's hand to stroke it. Together they indulged in reminiscences of their childhood, recalled a shared table with their parents and pleasant conversations. Just as the boys thought, the father said that human existence is the most soothing of all things to mortals, and Cheoj continued that no matter how lofty the dreams, everyone always returns to simplicity. The father is furious that his son is once again trying to take the primacy away from him, and the mother notices that the child is completely like him in this. The guy laughed and said it wasn't his fault he was his son and had adopted all his habits. While the guy was chatting with his dad, the little sister snatched some of his food and ate it with great gusto. Mom didn't want her son to go hungry, so she shared her portion with him. The girl again wanted to take the food from her brother, but he sharply pulled her back and said that Mom had shared it with him. Watching these actions of the children, the parents cheered and laughed. Thinking back on it, the adult Cheoj felt the same emotions again as he watched Dungli. The rush of emotion made him want to squeeze his little sister, nuzzle her cheeks, but realized that the girl was no longer a child and one should show her proper respect. He stared at the beautiful scenery of nature for a long time, reminiscing. After that, he called his sister by name. Without taking a break from her meal, she hurriedly asked her brother what he wanted to tell her. With great trepidation in his voice, he wished her a happy birthday. She smiled, overwhelmed with happiness, and thanked her little brother. The boy thought to himself that next year the day of the winter solstice would not be so easy and pleasant for him. He needed to fulfill a very important mission, to avenge the deaths of those closest to him. The next day, on his way home, the head of the clan asked his companion to accompany him a year later on the same day. The girl clarified where they needed to go. She said at once that she wouldn't go too far. Dungli said that she wanted to stay on Mount Danking to do meditation and do some cultivation. However, Cheoj smiled and said that he wanted to take the girl to kill someone. The girl was surprised, but after a little thought, she answered her brother in agreement. He warned that this mission would be very dangerous. Was she ready? The mentor replied that as long as her brother was with her, she had nothing to fear. Then he said that they should hurry up, for they had many things to do. They needed to strengthen their clan, and soon they would have many disciples. The message on the monitor stated that there were only 250 days left until the Heavenly Realm beta test. Players would soon make registration. Meanwhile, Luo Bing and Chen Xiao met in the Mo clan's dwelling. The guy asked the girl if she knew where the head was. It seemed to him that everyone had forgotten about him. The girl was obviously upset about something. She didn't know where her master was. If he was around, she wouldn't have wasted time talking to her apprentice. After that, the guy finally realized that her thoughts were completely occupied with the head of Lu. But he still had some hope that he hadn't completely lost. No one in the neighborhood knew where the head had gone. Chen Xiao needed to discuss one more matter with him, after which he would surely be convinced that he was the mysterious senior disciple. Finally, he saw two figures on the horizon. He realized that it was Dunglai and Cheoj, so he didn't have to wait long. Quickly running up to the boys, he informed them that he had come to say goodbye to them. The head nodded and told him to leave as soon as possible. The apprentice was confused and realized that the situation was not quite right. The guy then decided to check if the clan head knew Auntie Ning and Yu Yue. That would mean that he was the same senior co-disciple. Chen asked if he needed to send his regards to them. The master immediately realized that this kid was testing him. But considering that the clan's reputation was currently stagnant, it would be a good idea to open up and get something from the Sword Sect. After all, what could be better than receiving encouragement from one of the greatest sects of our time? He said to greet Auntie Ning on his behalf. With Yue being the lowest in rank, Chaoj couldn't greet him as well. The guy immediately realized that the mysterious fellow student was standing in front of him, for he was familiar with the Sword Clan elder. Chen agreed and bowed to the head of the Mo clan before leaving this house. Watching the apprentice leave their domain, Cheoj thought hopefully that the lad should not fail his hopes. Dungli asked what her brother was looking at so intently. He replied that he was watching the flying advertisement being sent to the Sword Sect. Chen flew and thought about how similar Yu and Chaog were. Neither one nor the other said each other's names, even though they clearly knew each other. Definitely, they purposely hid their acquaintance and friendship in order to one day shock the whole world with this information. Upon his return, the guy was going to strengthen his theory about his senior fellow student, but he wasn't going to reveal information about Mo's head, so that this secret would only be his and his friend Yue's. A week after the disciple left the Mo clan, there was no word from the Sword Sect. Chaoj didn't understand if the guy had gone somewhere else to show off. After that, another week passed, but there was still no news. Our hero didn't understand why. After completing the task, the guy still hadn't returned with a report. When a whole month had passed since Chen Xiao had gone home, Clan Chief Mo was simply furious. He waited for news from the Sword Sect, but no news came. Meanwhile, in that very same Sword Clan, Yu Yue and Chen Xiao met. The guy was very quick to try to tell his friend about what had happened on his journey. Yu couldn't believe that the master had broken another milestone so quickly. He realized that he would surpass him in every aspect of the Mo clan. In that case, the guy would be left completely out of the picture and become just like he was when he was a kid. He won't even be able to keep up with his shadow. Not really taking in the information Chen was saying, Yui shouted that it shouldn't be like this. Surprised by this outburst of emotion, the friend asked what happened to his fellow student, but the guy only replied that they should meet later. For now he had a realization and wanted to be left alone to cultivate. Left alone, Chen envied his friend, for he could gain realization every time he wanted it himself. But he was also on his way to a big lesson. He wanted to spread the word about the dangerous fellow student everywhere, but not to reveal his name. In this way, he would introduce a sense of mystery, but would not reveal the name of the Mo clan head until his death. When spring came, the Sword Clan disciple was forever dead in Lu's heart. He realized that he had to think of another way to attract Nubians to his clan. The guy realized that his clan was very weak, as it only had a couple of disciples. Luobing noticed that the mentor had turned his attention to her, but the one was only thinking of ways to make his sect stronger. You could get attention at the girl's expense, but only old perverts would fall for that. He wanted to develop the clan, and characters like that wouldn't do him any good. As he thought of the strong players, he suddenly remembered the master he had to say goodbye to. Given his teacher's favor, Chaoj had previously been able to even the god of war confess some things to him. Abruptly pulling himself away from his thoughts, the hero decided that he must not think of the wizard again, for he would start looking for her. We needed to check where the students who had previously descended the mountain were now. None of them had returned yet. Suddenly all of the clan members heard bells ringing. What could it mean? Our hero realized that it was finally time for him to show off again. The nationwide bell, which was the bell that was sounded, was set up on the founding day of the Mo clan at the main gate. A total of 301 bells were set up in the area. Each of them was personally forged by the 9th Lord of the Sword Sect, so they were very expensive. He operated on a simple principle. If something happened in the mortal world, incense was lit and the bell began to ring. It was also called an emergency line. More often than not, when the Mo clan's bell rang, it didn't end well. Luo Bing wanted to be helpful and suggested that she go down the mountain and check what had happened. But the guy wanted to prove himself too, so he said he would do it himself. The girl, however, insisted that she wanted to follow her master. She finally got her way and the head allowed her to go with him. But she had to act fast in case something happened. Dungli watched as the girl flew along with her brother and was incredibly angry. Flying over his domain, Cheoj noticed something near the Misty River. Luo Bing asked the young master if it was the Misty River again. Away from her mentor, she could afford to address the guy like that. She realized her sister was angry at all the girls who approached the mentor, but he was so handsome. Luo realized that she was of low origin, so she couldn't expect to be the wife of the clan head. Last time the bell rang, the place where the incense came from was a misty river. What happened this time? The people who had gathered below immediately noticed that a cultivator was descending towards them. When the guys came down, all the people began to greet them and rejoice that the clan head himself had come. Cheoj used magic to help the village elder up and asked what their problem was. He told him that the waterman had reappeared. The clan head wondered if this waterman had come to the village again. Luo Bing thought that the master would be angry now after all. They hadn't done anything to the monster last time. It popped up on Lu's monitor that he had activated the mission. Then he realized that there really was a waterman in this place that needed to be defeated. For killing a monster from the bottom of the Misty River, the hero was rewarded with 10,000 experience points. But Luo Bing kept thinking that Master was angry. After all, they had already defeated this demon 6 months ago. She remembered that she and Hai Ting had been on this case 6 months ago, as the mentors were doing their own thing. At that time, the boys did not have enough skills and experience. Therefore, they could have been killed if they had fought with the watermen. On their own initiative, they took the clan's spiritual stones and asked for help from a middle sect from the same area. The clan mentors took the stones and promised to help with the problem. That time, Cheoj even praised the boys for completing this task. He said they have to take care of those under their control and the rocks are not that important. The girl realized that those types had just taken their stones that time, but hadn't done anything. Cheoj also realized that those middle sect members had deceived not only his disciples, but also himself. It was a bold thing to do. In the heavenly realm, wickedness is not born from a single offense, but from their aggregates. In order for a waterman to be born, it is necessary that the offenses of the drowned have accumulated over many years. People admired Lu's ability to walk on water. They thought the past representative looked down on them, but he could never compare to the head of the Mo clan. The hero understood that there couldn't be several watermen in one area at once. That meant those reps didn't do anything last time. The master asked the elder if any of the residents had suffered at the hands of the monster. The one replied that Xiaomaji's father died when he went fishing. The people mourned greatly, for he was left with a young son and a widow. Cheoj told Luo Bin to stay with the people and guard them until his return. Once inside the water, he ordered the system to detect the target. When the system found the watermen, it reported that the monster was already half a year old. Its aura was incredibly strong and equal to level 20. At this moment, Cheoj finally realized that this was the monster from last time. The people who gathered by the river were worried about Head Lu and hoped that he could defeat the villain. Suddenly, a funnel appeared in the middle of the river, and the body of a monster flew out of it. The people began to worry about where Lu was. With one blow of his sword in its scabbard, the hero defeated the evil force and made the people admire him. After that, the guy told everyone to close their eyes for a few moments. After people opened them, they didn't find the head and his assistant anymore, and they didn't even have time to thank their heroes. On the way home, Cheoj asked the female disciple which clan they had asked for help from last time. She hurriedly replied that it was the Shuemen sect. The guy noted that this clan specialized in water sword techniques, and the guys had chosen her for a reason. The girl asked if they were going to go to this sect next. The head said they would definitely go there, but there were some things that needed to be done before that. The guys were approaching the house where the dead guy lived. His widow was sewing up her son's things after a fishing trip. The boy thought about why his father still hadn't come back from fishing and brought him caramelized fruit. His mom was always crying about it. Suddenly, they heard a knock on their gate. The mother told her son to open it quickly. Opening the door, the child saw on the doorstep the very fruit his father had promised to bring. To the whole neighborhood, this death was only the death of a simple fisherman. but his family lost their father, husband, and support. Luo Bing noticed that the child did not have the ability to cultivate in the future. Keoj, on the other hand, noted that he was incredibly lucky. Who knows what he will become? The master noted to himself that the child's luck was the same as Xiao Chu's. The girl thought about the fact that despite his tough character, the gentleman is very soft inside. All the members of the Mo clan thought the same, but it's worth going back to the Shuyuemen clan, which ranks one of the last places of the middle hundred. The head is at his limit, and the elders are not very fond of each other. But even with this condition, this sect was stronger than the Mo sect. When Chaoj and Luo Bin arrived at the place, the locals admired the beauty of their couple. They were politely inquired as to the purpose of the visit of such fine personages. A new task popped up on Chaoj's monitor again. It said that the head of this clan had taken the stones but had not fulfilled what he had promised. For this reason, Chaoj had to be strict and teach the rules to the cultivators. The master paid no attention to the ordinary characters, for he needed to find the head of the sect. He tried to walk forward but was stopped by the guards. They sternly questioned him about whether he was trying to get inside without their permission. Chaoj saw the same bell on the top of the mountain, and decided that by ringing it he would make the head come to him himself. Making it ring out, it caused all the clan disciples to be shocked. They shouted that it was unacceptable to behave like this. Chaoj calmly watched as he was threatened by this sect's members. The guards didn't understand what to do next. They didn't even dare to attack the hero. One of them ventured out and asked again who he was, what sect he was from, and for what purpose he had come to them. But Chief Lu continued to ignore the boys. He only asked why no one had come to him even though the national bell was ringing. The disciples of the clan were very frightened and asked again, did he really say nationwide bell? Lu's expensive and beautiful clothes made the guys think that he was a legendary disciple of the Sword Clan. They realized that in such a case they were in big trouble. Such a representative would not make concessions. They had to report to the top immediately, but they were hesitant about who to send. The two clan elders were always fighting, so none of the disciples wanted to spoil their mood even more. Luo Bing watched what was happening and couldn't understand why the guys were thinking and looking at each other for so long. Finally, Chaoj asked if they were done making eyes at each other. If none of them take action, he will have to be ruthless. After saying that, each student began to run to report to their mentors. The hero's companion asked him if he had come to teach that irresponsible student a lesson. Mentor replied that he only wanted to get justice for the widow and son of the guy who died. At last, the elders appeared in front of Chaoj. At the same time, they asked him why he was ringing the bell. The sect head was in seclusion and cultivating. The two elders were sharing power at this time. Noticing the strife between them, Chaoj asked if everyone in this clan had such chemistry. Luo Bin added that they must have very strange tastes. This angered the elders. One of them said that even if he had unconventional tastes, he would not have paid attention to this dwarf. After that, the disciples of the clan also began to suspect that their elders really did have unusual preferences. The enraged elders began yelling at everyone to shut up. Head Lu declared that he didn't come here to watch these melodramas. He introduced himself sternly. The disciples exhaled when they realized that this was not a disciple of the Sword Sect. The elder remembered that the Mo clan was at the end of the lowest hundred and asked what his representatives needed. Chaoj said that he was looking for someone who belonged to their clan. The elders understood that the guy had little experience and ability. How dare he come to them looking for someone? But one of them still decided to inquire about Chaoj's needs. Master replied that he needed a disciple named Meng Feng. The gray-robed elder realized that this was his direct disciple. So this guy came directly to him, and the other one was excited and wanted to watch the show. The disciple standing in the corner wondered why it was that the Mo clan's clan head suddenly called out his name. Perhaps the rumors of how attractive he was had gone beyond his clan and spread everywhere, but he hesitated at this option, for his looks have long been extolled by people from all over the county. A sudden realization came to him that he had heard the name of this clan before. A moment surfaced in his memories when the members of this sect asked him to help defeat the evil watermen from the Misty River. Then he made fun of them and told them to bow their knees since they were asking him for help. Luo Bing thought that before this, she had only kneeled before master and mentor, but people in that village are suffering, so she needs to do it. The members of the Mo clan offered their spirit stones as payment for their help. Upon seeing the stones, the guy said he agreed to the deal and would defeat this thing with one finger, but instead, he traded the stones for money and partied it away, ordering wine and easy-going girls. He simply forgot about his promise and didn't kill the monster. Realizing that the head came because of this, the guy didn't think that it would turn into something serious after all. This sect was insignificant. A waterman can only move in a river. At most, it can cause the death of a couple people, that's nothing. The disciple realized that he needed to settle the matter so as not to get his elder in trouble. He decided to confess to what he had done, because then he would not be scolded. The boy said that his strength was not enough to defeat the waterman and he ran away, but he is willing to double the amount of the spirit stones. The elder thought the fellow was good, for he was able to admit his guilt and offered a large compensation. He figured the small clan probably needed resources so they'd get them, but Cheog was adamant and said that the monster had caused the death of a fisherman in that village. The careless disciple thought that Head Lu was trying to squeeze more resources out of them. Then he offered to increase the compensation to triple the amount, but he thought to himself that the life of a mere mortal was not worth that much. Our hero stated that he was not at all interested in compensation. He told his disciple to tell him what the 16th rule of the Sword Clan was. This rule stated that one who accepted an errand through the bell but failed to fulfill it, resulting in the death of a person, should be punished with a lash. The elders thought about the fact that this master wanted to get even more. The punishment of the lash involved 6 strokes. 3 of them were thunderstrokes, and 3 more were heart strokes on Dao's heart. The thunderstrokes were painful, but they could be healed. But the cardiac ones were worse. If a cultivator's heart was unstable, it might split, and then he would never be able to advance a single boundary. In such a case, even with the help of great cultivators, it would be impossible to be cured. The apprentice was greatly frightened and begged his master to save him. The elder decided that he would give a lot of resources to the Mo clan right now, but he would definitely give them back later. Afterward, he smiled sweetly at the head of Lu and motioned for him to step aside to talk privately. But Cheoj didn't even listen to him. He turned to his disciple and said he would give him 3 options. The first option was 6 lashes. As a second, he suggested a sword fight with him. As a third, he offered 2 of the first 2 options in one at once. The second elder noticed that the first one wanted to take Lu aside and pay him off. This was in direct violation of the Sword Clan's rules. The apprentice trembled with fear and begged his master to help him. But the one knew that if he broke the rules, he would just give the clan to his rival. It was then that the young lad realized that his mentor had given up on him. Cheoj threatened that if the student didn't make a choice now, he would choose the third option for him. The guy was very scared and chose a sword fight. He thought to himself that Head Lu only had one boundary of the 8th heaven layer. This was incomparable to his level. But Cheoj said that he should relax since he wasn't even going to bear his sword. This really surprised the young man. He thought that even if by succumbing to him, Cheoj would be victorious, he would never train the sword art again. The elders didn't understand why he had become so soft and giving in. Surely he wanted the materials after all. After that, the battle began, and the hero showed his magic. The elders realized that he had used the power of heaven and earth and were very surprised. The apprentice tried to defend himself, but his sword cracked from the force of precognition and split into small pieces. He ended up just collapsing to the ground, out of breath from the force of the blow. Cheoj noticed that the disciple apparently couldn't withstand the force of his blow. The elder realized that Lu had not shown softness, but cruelty. The other disciples told him that the sword of the lad's heart was broken. The hero said that after this, the guy would be able to cultivate, but he wouldn't be able to improve his heart. The clan elder was incredibly angry at Cheoj. Another elder gloated that a mentor couldn't stand up for his student because it was against the rules. He provoked him and told him to pay attention to how arrogant Clan Chief Mo was. He should be punished. The elder held back his aggression with great difficulty and remarked that Head Lu had incredible abilities at his age. Cheoj calmly replied that he didn't need flattery from the elder. Luo Bing stared at the hero mesmerized, realizing that this was the true sword cultivation. Her master was incredibly intelligent and kind. She loved him with all her soul, but she realized her guilt for turning to this guy. Did he really have to take the place of her and Heng Ting? The second elder realized that he might miss such a chance to gain power and decided to add fuel to the fire. As he approached the student, he noted that his injuries were very serious. More than 10 years of training had been wasted. At that moment, he noticed the elder boiling with anger and realized that his plan had worked. Then he continued and said that the guy's mouth was full of blood and his teeth were knocked out. He felt sorry for him and lamented that no one had interceded. Cheoj noticed what was happening and decided to teach the elder a lesson. He asked if the disciple had the right to resist. They realized that according to the rules of the Sword Clan, if he was resisting, Lu could also kill him. After that, the master asked another question about if he had withstood his blow. Would everything have gone smoothly? The elder remarked that compared to lashes, fighting is a better option. Aside from that, it wasn't his punishment that was strong, it was the clan that was incredibly weak. And at the end, he added that all the clan members were simply worthless. At this point, the elders just boiled with anger and said that the head of LU had insulted their entire clan. One of them asked if it was dignified for the clan head to maximally attack a guy who was just a disciple. Cheoj noted that he couldn't compare to the clan head, but he was half a rank higher than the 2 elders. In that case, He wondered why they didn't bow when they saw Lu. They both just boiled with rage. Cheoj hastened to remind the elders that they were not heads yet. Suddenly, from somewhere above, everyone heard applause. The young girl smiled as she watched this performance. She remarked that Lu was very interesting. When the elders saw her, they were frightened and began to think that soon they would be finished. Our hero could not tear his gaze away and wondered what had brought the girl here. This beauty turned out to be Li Nanwei, the daughter of a master from the Sword Clan. She possessed a high status that was higher than even Yu Yue's, but the main thing was that she and Yue were a couple. Keoj wondered if the guy was still in the stage of secretly falling in love with the girl. Seeing the beauty, Luobin became very nervous and thought that Lu was looking at her charms. She figured he liked that type of girl. She remembered that there were 2 girls in her brothel who had great virtues, and men liked them for it. Then she decided that when she returned home, she would use the method Madame had taught her. Keoj, on the other hand, was in his own thoughts at this moment, thinking about what level the Swordmaster's daughter possessed. After trying to scan her skills, the guy realized he had failed. If the system couldn't perform the check, then the girl was at least 20 levels above him. The girl approached our hero and introduced herself to him with a smile. He replied that he had heard about her from Yu Yue. He thought to himself that he had done this to help the guy. The elders couldn't understand how the head of a low-hundred clan could accept a greeting from a master's daughter. The girl also remarked that he was very interesting since he didn't fall on his knees in front of her, but accepted deference from her. Then she remembered that Yue had once told her about a mysterious fellow student. It was worth checking out, it might be this guy.